over that, right? The videos?
Okay, recording has started.
Yeah. Okay, before we get started, we should at least introduce ourselves, so, for the audience.
Yeah, I'm also doing a recording backup just in case it fails.
Alright, me too. Alright.
Alright,
I'll get started since I'm the one who got this all together. Alright, I'm Jacob. I am Thunderbolt94 on YouTube, and we are doing a point-by-point response to Esplin227's videos. Alright, who's next? Alright, you go ahead.
I'm Brandon, and Deck Rash on YouTube.
Alright, Philo?
I'm Philo. I'm also known as the Dutch Philosopher on YouTube.
Alright, Evo?
My name is Will, and I'm an alcoholic. Oh, no, wait, wrong meeting. My name is Will, and I do Evo-Gen videos on YouTube.
Alright, Chris?
My name's Chris, and I am violently graceful on YouTube.
Alright, Dar?
I am Dar-a-Nak, not Dar-o-Nak, but Dar-a-Nak. And Dar-o-Nak is my YouTube channel, because the zeros look like O's.
Alright, Daniel?
My name is Dan, and I'm Brandon. This is E912.
Alright, Hippo?
I am Anthony, I prefer Tony, and I am Hippo11222 on YouTube.
Alright. Okay.
We're missing Stuart?
Oh, Stuart, go ahead.
Together we are Wild Stallions.
Alright, we have...
Hey!
Okay. And just for the record, since this is being recorded, everybody's channel will be linked below. I know that whoever's going to watch this will not see Darnuk's picture up there. That's because I'm recording it. But everybody's channel will be below.
Alright.
YouTube team assemble.
Again, we have a group of mixture of both atheists and theists. So we have mostly Christians, and we have one secular theist who's not a Christian, and we have two or three atheists, if I got that correct. So we're going to start from part 2 of Esplin's videos, and the rule is we're going to take it clip by clip. If anyone wants me to stop the video to make a point, please let me know, and I will stop the video to make the general point. But other than that, I will stop the video at specific points so we can discuss what has been said. Is that all right with everyone?
Sure.
By me.
All right.
Okay.
Okay. We're going to start here.
Yeah, I get really busy too. I have videos that I've been making for months. Like that YouTube video I made about Hugh James with the movies I wanted them to watch. I've been thinking about making that since I started my channel on YouTube like months ago. So don't worry about it.
So let's get started. Now I'm going to address one point. You seem to have a problem with the whole notion of why I don't take comparisons of God with the flying spaghetti monster or Santa seriously. You seem to have a big problem with that. I do not take those comparisons seriously. Here's why. The main reason is by the end of the day, these comparisons end up boiling down to a semantic meaning.
Only to someone who completely misunderstands what those arguments were originally made to illustrate, like you, unfortunately, and William Lane Craig, which you used later, which is...
They are useless comparisons to an idea of what theists are claiming.
No, they aren't. The flying spaghetti monster argument has nothing to do with what you're claiming. What you're claiming is actually inconsequential. That's why they used the flying spaghetti monster instead of something more plausible. Again, you completely misunderstood what the flying spaghetti monster analogy is supposed to illustrate.
Yes, sir. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I'd like to
Flying spaghetti monster is true.
Well,
That was all of a doom house.
I find this useless to being analogous to God, whether it be the Christian God specifically or a theistic version of God, because proposing that these are like necessary properties, this conglomerations of noodles and meatballs, that would not fit. That would be a contingent entity. That wouldn't even be close to or analogous to what we theists mean by God.
So the other thing is that it wasn't thought up to combat the idea of God itself, but the idea of an intelligent designer.
Yeah.
Like,
I
love the fact that nowadays it's much more used by atheists and agnostics to kind of say they're created Pastafarianism, which is to kind of say, you may see this religion as ridiculous, but we find all the religion ridiculous, so just respect our religion and stuff.
From what I looked into, it was originally used to combat intelligent design, and lay people kind of popularized it to use as kind of a parody religion. Like I'm a Pastafarian, ramen,
Pretty much.
Right.
Well, in what the argument is that he keeps mentioning. I mean, I can understand the analogy with the spaghetti monster, but he called it an argument, and does that refer to any kind of discussion you, Jacob, and Esplin had, that he used it in some kind of argument form?
I don't recall specifically. I only mentioned that flying spaghetti monster analogy to another person in the comment section of one of the previous videos, because the guy was trying to make the a flying spaghetti monster Santa Claus analogy.
I feel like this kind of the analogy, not only is it not accurate, but it kind of has a mind of its own when people use it as a tool of ridicule. And in the philosophical world, that's a fallacy. Appeal to ridicule, I don't care why you use ridicule, it's fallacious in the philosophical realm.
That's why I was wondering if there is any substantive argumentation in which you use this analogy, because I believe we can all agree that the idea of a spaghetti monster being the cause of the universe is practically impossible, because you agree?
So it wouldn't be analogous. It's not that he's proposing that it's real. It's just this wouldn't be analogous, because it wouldn't even be possible to have a necessary entity made of contingent parts.
Exactly.
As I've seen, that at least that first video all the way through, with along with Thunderbolt here, I can at least let y'all know he goes quite a bit deeper into this, but it doesn't really get any better. So I would say that we need to continue to get a bigger picture of what he's saying, Jake.
All right, let's continue then. So he's playing parts of my clip, so just for the record.
Claiming that God is a necessary being that created the universe. That is what we're claiming.
No, that isn't what you're claiming. You're claiming that God is a necessary being that created the universe, and many other traits you're applying to him. That's what the flying spaghetti monster argument is dealing with. It knows. It's granting you that first premise.
Hold on, stop.
Well, what?
I just have to point out, the flying spaghetti monster is not an argument, it's a parody, and for him to compare it to an argument is... How the hell do I put this?
That's what confused me as well. What's he actually saying?
He's giving it more weight and credence than it actually has. And I don't have a problem with the flying spaghetti monster analogy or parody religion or anything like that. But the thing is, something that's meant for a laugh, or to take the piss out of religion or creationism in general, that's not an actual argument.
Right.
It's like the stuff on the Onion is actual news.
Right. That's exactly what he's doing.
And also, he's talking about, I think, Jacob, in that video you were saying that what was it? That about a necessary being, and he's like, it's giving you that, and I was like, no, it's not, because the very fact about a necessary being, it's one of those arguments that that is pretty much to show that the flying spaghetti, show how ridiculous the flying spaghetti monster is, because it's not a necessary being.
Yeah, and did he use? I think he used another compared it to like Russell's teapot.
Yeah, he did.
Example of the flying teapot. The problem is that's not a necessary entity either. What Bertrand Russell meant was basically posing something which has so many ad hoc features that it's unfalsifiable. Like the teapot is invisible, it's flying at such a fast speed you can't detect it, and that's what Russell meant. So this would not be
possible. Does he perhaps an argument predicated upon the flying spaghetti monster, or does he just? It seems to me he's just saying no, you're wrong. Whilst not.
Yeah, and he doesn't even give an example.
Yeah, I'll play devil's advocate here and try and give them a hand. I suppose you could say that, because obviously the flying spaghetti monster is an incoherent notion, I suppose you could argue, well obviously this gets into the concept of God, you could probably argue that it's a comparison, well God's an incoherent concept, but of course you need to actually show that. So
you have to show that, you know.
Argument, it's just an argument via analogy, if it's an argument at all, which it isn't, but...
Well, the problem is, what I meant by when he didn't give an example is he said, the spaghetti monster, we're giving you that. But what you're proposing is that God is necessary and with all these additional properties that aren't necessary. But he didn't give any examples. Like, I think he vaguely gave this analogy. Well, what about when it says God enjoys the smell of burning flesh? Is that necessary?
Well, that wasn't even part of the original argument to begin with, because we weren't arguing for the Christian God at all.
Just kind of a general idea of God, then.
Yeah.
I say many atheists. By atheists, I mean atheists like Esplin, not like probably. I don't want to be disparaging and use it. But basically, a lot of atheists on YouTube tend to think, "Oh, it doesn't prove the Christian God," which doesn't matter at all.
Well, I would like to say that a lot of people like the arguments that people tend to say, well, you know, it doesn't prove the Christian God. Like people bring up Kalam and show, well, that doesn't lead you Christian to the Christian God. It leads you at least to deism. And I have 2 points to make to that. One, what do you think deism is? Don't treat deism like this middle way between atheism and theism. He even brought that up. Deism is a subset of deism. Deism is just a general God. While deism specifically refers to that God created the universe and he kind of let it go off on its own. God does not directly intervene through the act of miracles. So that's what deism means. And number 2, my second objection would be that for what he's objecting to, I mean, I really don't see a good, this as being a good analogy. It's not, Kalam, or whatever argument you do, what people would object to say, well, it doesn't prove the Christian God. Well, it never was intended to. And it really
done by Muslim philosophers.
In fact, I was in Jacob Kelly. I was in an argument with an atheist on Facebook a couple of weeks back. The whole deal was with that. I was trying to help her to understand that the Kalam argument is not an argument to prove the existence of any kind of God. It's just saying that, you know, and it's also not to say that it proves the existence of God. It just says that the existence of God is possible.
And it also lays out a general God as well. For all these arguments where they're talking about the plural argument or the Kalam, all these arguments argue for a general God. And if you say, well, it doesn't prove the Christian God, it makes me wonder if you've really read up on the material, because the people that popularize these arguments have addressed that over
assuming for the sake of the arguments, the arguments are sound to begin with. Because if the arguments are sound, then it would only prove a general theistic conception of God, and not necessarily the Christian or Muslim God.
That's kind of where the whole faith thing comes in too.
All right.
You need more specific arguments to get to a specific God. I mean, William makes big points out all the time, yet you still get. Then again, nobody ever accused these people of actually paying attention to his work. So.
All right. I think we should continue. All right.
We're granting you that God is a timeless being. that created the universe. What we're dealing with is everything after that. Why does that timeless entity need to be Yahweh Elohim? Why can't it be any other God?
Stop it.
Stop.
What's that?
Stop it. And here was the point where I was like, where on earth did they even say that the God they're talking about was the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob? That was the Judeo-Christian God. This is where I think that Esplin is really just going off on a tangent.
Yeah, because it seems he wants to continue the argument, and I first of all he said we grant you that the theistic God exists, but why is it the Christian God? Is he trying to just simply move on the argument from okay, we're going to say God exists, so now give me any reasons to believe that it's the Christian God?
And who the hell is we, by the way?
Exactly.
There's this kind of manner of we.
It's like to authority, as if the majority of atheists agree that there is a God, but we just don't know if it's the Christian God. But that's
I know people that won't even get that.
That's on atheism.
So.
Yeah.
I know people that wouldn't even give you that. It's,
I'm gonna have to take a little break again.
Okay, that's fine.
Seems to me like he's shoehorning that particular argument in there.
But the thing is, if he admits that a God exists, then why is he saying that? So obviously,
I think he's doing it just
I think he's doing a hypothetical. Like, we'll do this hypothetically why the Christian God.
Which misses that whole point of the argument.
All right, let's continue.
Yes.
Flying spaghetti monster. Is that an improbable example? Yes, it's improbable on purpose. It's improbable because just as you cannot show that your God is jealous, like you say, like the Bible says he is, that he enjoys the smell of burnt flesh, kind of specific, isn't it? Tell me, is that necessary for the creation of the universe? Go.
Wait, hold on. Oops, hold on. My computer.
Really, just on that, I mean, he's making a whole bunch of, he's just going off on several tangents anyway, and really tangents that don't, that's not the whole of them.
Hold on. I'm sorry. Is that
Break it up a little bit.
Actually, there's reverb coming from Philosopher.
Yeah.
Okay.
Breaking up badly.
I'm wondering, am I clicking the reverb?
No, it's coming from Philosopher. He needs to turn down his mic setting on Skype or his volume output on Skype.
All right. You want? What was your point, Brandon?
Okay, what I was just trying to say, and see if I can get my thoughts straight here, is that he seems intended, right where you stopped, Jacob, is that he's going off on a tangent here, that he's not only going off things that have absolutely nothing to do with the argument, but the whole thing about the smell of burnt flesh and everything like that, but also, well, of course I know it's not part of the discussion, this is like a totally different story for a totally different time, but he's putting forth a lot of things that really are just a form of misconceptions anyway. But,
okay.
To me, that just looks like he's going off on a tangent.
Okay.
No, I'll just point this out. I think some of these things are red herrings.
Yes.
All right, let's continue. All right.
I just wanted to... I completely forgot what I was going to say. Thanks a lot, Jacob.
Sorry. All right. If you remember it, just bring it up again, okay? Let me continue.
We can compare because they are not necessary beings. If you want to demonstrate that they are necessary beings, like we're claiming that God is, you have to demonstrate that Santa Claus, the flying spaghetti monster, are timeless, spaceless, immaterial beings that created the universe.
No, we don't have to demonstrate that. That's the point of the analogy. We're granting you that premise.
What was that?
Yeah.
The problem here is you would have to show that they have those properties so that they are properly analogous to the God of theism.
Yeah.
Or even Christian specifically, because that would be, or it's not analogous. Say if it would not be analogous to what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And that's
the fact that
actually do that.
As well as the fact that if the flying spaghetti monster was a timeless, spaceless, immaterial being, then it wouldn't be a flying spaghetti monster.
Right.
Yeah, it's like it's a debate that William Lane Craig had. I think it was Lewis Bolcott who argued, why does it have to be God, and argued that why can't it be a computer? But then when you get down, when you get basically it's just semantics.
Well, he has that on the video.
Yeah, because what happens with computers is that it has all the computers that would inhibit it from being a necessary being. I mean, if you take off an immaterial computer, then
It makes no sense.
Yeah,
it robs
exactly.
all the properties
Yeah,
that make it.
the closer it gets to being God, the lesser it becomes what it's supposed to be, for example, a computer. Or otherwise, if you're going to say God is a computer, it will cease to be God. It will be less of God and more of a computer.
Hang on. I remembered what I was going to say about how he keeps going on about burnt flesh, is that he seems to be predicated upon the premise that unless you can prove every aspect of the Christian gods to be necessary, then the whole argument's bunk. That seems to be what he's suggesting. Like, unless you can...
I just think they call that a house of cards fallacy.
For one thing, it would be the whole point of the whole burning flesh, where it gives descriptions of the Christian God that might be considered anthropomorphized. And then with the whole thing with jealousy, this is not jealousy, this petty feeling of envy. It's more of a defending of the practice of people rejecting who God is as basically the source of goodness, and by doing that you reject the good.
Well, the thing with certain parts of the Old Testament is that you have to really understand it in like the Jewish cultural background of the ancient Near East. I mean, and also when people make a big deal about how Jesus says you have to hate your family. That's an example of exaggeration and like hyperbole. He's not saying you literally have to hate your family. It's like it's basically that you have to understand.
You have to put God above your.
I think we should.
Basically, the one that doesn't put God at the center of their life is not worthy of.
All right. Just real quick, I agree with that. You kind of have to understand the culture or the people that wrote something before you can, fully understand it. Like the philosophy, the time and the culture in which they live, the kind of geographical settings in which they live. It kind of explains a lot of the things that they write.
Yeah, because a lot of people today, including some Christians like KJVionists, seem to think that reading the Bible in English is a valid exegesis when it's not. Right. Like most people think that reading the Bible in English is okay, but I say not so fast, also.
I would at least say teach a humanities class that brings up, ancient Hebrew history or something like that, or ancient Hebrew culture.
I mean, you don't have to know every aspect of it. You just have to do some basic. I mean, it's not hard.
I suggest anyone that has any questions about that, you should probably look up Cartesian Theist video he made on divine jealousy. I thought that was a pretty good video that he made that I would address that issue right there.
I think we need to go ahead and continue with the video because we are kind of some time here.
We're kind of going off on tangent. Let's continue.
That a timeless, all-powerful entity created the universe. After that, you have to demonstrate any specific characteristics you attribute to that all-powerful entity. That's why we're using the example of flying spaghetti monster. We can't show you. We can demonstrate that it's all-powerful and that it created the universe, not because because we actually can, but because we're granting that premise. We're in an agreement to grant that premise. What we're asking is, why does that thing have to be Jesus? Is it not ethnocentric to think that you figured out that entity, even though your evidence is interchangeable with every other religion? What makes you think that that entity is not a flying spaghetti? We don't have to show you that those things are necessary. We don't believe in those things. We're showing you that your argument only gets you to theism. We're showing you that...
Yeah, see where he says that thing of deism? Deism doesn't mean that. That would get you to bear... let's see all these arguments would just get you to general theism. It wouldn't get you to deism. It doesn't prove God doesn't intervene. It does not intervene in the natural world. That's what deism means. If you use it like that, I really question if you even know what deism is.
And that's the thing that Jacob and I were talking about last night. To me, it seems that this guy does not understand his terminology. He doesn't understand philosophical terminology, and I don't think he really understands religious terminology. He's talking about that only gets to deism, but you have to.
Sorry, continue.
Go ahead, philosopher. I've made my point.
Oh, and by the way,
He doesn't understand anything about religion at all when he says every aspect of Christianity is interchangeable with other religions. That's absolutely ridiculous.
I don't think he said. I don't think he said Christianity itself.
He said a specific religion, and that's interchangeable with everything else.
I think he meant the concepts of God proved by, demonstrate, that the argument seeks to demonstrate.
I think what he meant was saying can we prove that God exists in general, and that all the monotheistic religions share very similar concepts of God.
He basically said that all the other religions, including the one of your God when he was talking to you, Jacob, are all interchangeable. Who even says that? Does it? I wouldn't say that the Christian God's properties are interchangeable with the Hindu's pantheistic conception of God. I wouldn't agree to that at all.
Certain religions are even atheistic themselves. Certain traditions of Buddhism and Hinduism are atheistic. Some are pantheists. Some are beyond that. And also how, in certain religions, Theology. That's a cult, not a religion.
Some sects of Taoism are actually like that.
How, in the Greek, if you look at the Greek mythology, the gods don't create anything themselves; they're created. This is how everything emerges from some chaotic form of events, and then the gods emerge, and then
from the chaos.
I mean, these philosophical arguments would probably be compatible with perhaps deism, just general theism, with Christianity in particular, Islam, non-Messianic Judaism,
Well, I think it would be really compatible with, I'd say, monotheistic religions, or maybe possibly polytheistic religions that posit only one supreme creator, really. So I would think it only speaks on the creator and not other.
Okay.
I think that's
the opposite that we show. At least, I think it. Well, I'm not sure.
Yeah. Well, for instance, if we just gave one example of I don't know, Kalam, the positive would not be.
Okay, everybody, stop for a moment.
Okay.
Jacob, you're reverbing, and so is philosopher again.
Okay.
Okay. So, is it good now?
It's still happening a bit.
Okay.
Can I continue?
Yes.
Is that all?
Yes, Hippo. Go on and continue.
If we're going to use things like Kalam, it wouldn't be analogous with something like the pantheon of Greeks, where these are physical entities. But on the Kalam, the conclusion leads to God being immaterial, so be compatible with Zeus or Athena or any of those
Right, because we're not talking about a physical God at all.
So you mean it's interchangeable with all the other religions? No, it's not. There's some religions that would in fact be excluded from our definition of what we mean by God when we make these arguments. So.
But would you say that some of the monotheistic religions have similar conceptions of God, like say Allah versus Yahweh, something like that?
Yeah, sure. That would be where they're compatible with these arguments. Yes, that's correct.
Can I give you theist a thought experiment for a moment? Where I think I see where Esplin is coming from, even though that he says we are given theists the concept that there is a theistic type of God out there. I think that's exactly where he is coming from on his own, and asking you to explain that if there is such a thing as a theistic type of God, to explain what your concept of that theistic God is. Like, how would you explain that the deity of the Bible is true if he grants you that a theistic God does exist?
Well, the first thing we would have to do is, if we're going to argue philosophically, we don't start from Christianity. We would argue Christianity later if we're going to argue for Yahweh. When we're using these kind of arguments, we're not assuming that God is Yahweh right away. If we were to say the cosmological arguments, for the sake of the argument, are sound, the most they could do is prove a general theistic conception of God. We acknowledge that these arguments do not prove Yahweh or Allah. Okay, but like just as a thought experiment, say that Esplin grants you those arguments that a general theistic deity exists. How would you go about proving that general theistic deity is the deity of Christianity?
Well, we'd have to have arguments that the resurrection is true. And that's where I think arguments from history come in.
Exactly. I think that the point that Esplin is mistaken about is later on in this video he talks about revealed knowledge, and sure, there are attributes that we can attribute to this ultramundane creator, such as agency, such as at least enormous power. We can attribute those things, and we can also attribute that he is the foundation for morality, whatever that is. We could argue that, but certain attributes you can attribute to him on the basis of the veridicality of Jesus' claims, and their Christianity really shows, an argument to really show that Christianity is the truth, as long as it is actually true that Jesus Christ rose from the dead. But that's a whole different argument.
Yeah, and it's also not really a philosophical argument either. I mean obviously there's like philosophical.
It's just philosophy of history and stuff.
Well, yeah, obviously there's stuff like what counts as historical knowledge, and can miracles be identified as historic? But other than that, it's mostly like, well, it's predicated upon, well, is there like good evidence for this event? Obviously, like the odd thing about Christianity and also I'd say Judaism is that they're mostly, they make a number of historical claims, whereas other religions are primarily philosophical, like removed from like their moral teachings primarily, and or metaphysical claims that can't be examined or proven, I'd say.
Okay. That I just wanted that recorded for Esplin for later. But,
okay.
All right. So you guys want to continue? I'm going to ask you guys to go on for about another, about another 10 to 12 minutes, and then I will stop the recording. So, go on.
Okay. Let's continue then. Okay.
Claiming that may be one of the things you're claiming within a framework, so you can then push other dogma. But that's inconsequential to your beliefs. You need to show beyond amorphous concept of a creator. You're not claiming that. You're claiming specific characteristics. That is what the flying spaghetti monster argument is trying to show you. Even if it's unnecessary, you need to demonstrate why it's necessarily Yahweh Elohim. Why can't you grasp that? You are completely so is the painting. So is not because of the structure of what they are. You can't prove that Teapot created the universe. You can't prove that the universe is there. The point is until you can prove something is there, you cannot attribute characteristics to it.
Okay, guys, before we continue, could we, just for my sake, but also other people, try and be as quiet as you can, because whenever somebody laughs or something, the audio goes down and I can barely hear it.
Alright, sorry about that.
I don't know if somebody else is suffering from that problem, but...
Sorry about that.
No problem. I would encourage laughing because it's good, but in this case, you can't hear video.
Okay, so I think a way to start is, first of all, amorphous. He already granted timeless. That is a property. It's not with no definite property. Are you kidding?
Yeah. I mean, he's assuming a lot in that statement.
Saying how the flying spaghetti monster argument is somehow demonstrating this when the flying spaghetti monster is incoherent with the concept of God that he's already granted. It's incompatible.
But he jumps from that. He says, I grant you this, and then somebody says, no, we don't grant you this.
Yeah,
then we do grant you this. I mean, what is your position, really?
The word amorphous is having no definite properties by saying it's amorphous. No, you just granted timelessness. So what's the deal here?
And also, amorphous doesn't mean no definite properties. It means shapeless.
Really?
I think A for no and morphous for form.
I'm guessing what he means by amorphous is that the concept of God that these arguments seem to establish is an amorphous burlap sack rather than like a tight-fitting glove, which is something we would not disagree with. I mean, he doesn't prove specific gods. We know.
Amorphous would actually apply to something closer to an amoeba than, something like a god, I guess.
A spiritual being.
Thank you.
Yeah. A spiritual being, shape doesn't apply to it. It has nothing to do with whether it has a shape or doesn't have a shape.
Well,
if it's material, then it's nothing at all, you know?
Well, just to clarify, there are several definitions. Amorphous can include lacking definite form, of no particular type, or lacking organization.
Thinking he's using it
either way, that doesn't zero in on the way he's using it. He's misusing the term amorphous.
Well, he's using it colloquially as a colloquial synonym, like say general, or
right. We're talking philosophy. We're not using colloquial terms here.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's not that big a deal. It's just it's a tendency to misuse terms.
Exactly. I guess. Kind of strange where to place this discussion. Is he talking in a purely philosophical matter, or is he simply venting? Because sometimes, not sometimes, probably the majority of the time when watching the video, I felt very uncomfortable because he seems to be overcome with emotion when talking about certain things, and that seems to me to be a lack in character. That doesn't demean his arguments, of course. But
well, it doesn't affect the quality of his argument. It does.
Exactly. But it's strange because is he saying this in a particular way, trying to convey a specific meaning, or is he simply trying to use big words to? I'm not saying that it's not intelligent, but is he trying to use big words to make his case stronger, or is he actually trying to say something with those words, which would seem incoherent if I can just quickly see this conversation that we've been having.
He doesn't want to come off as, much more emotional over this. He should probably script the video a bit better.
Okay, I think we should continue.
Okay.
I would probably just say to finish this up, just for like a final word on it before we go on. If he meant just by amorphous shape, then so what? We already defined it as so what. And if he defines it as having no definite type, then denying what you just gave us is given. So, I
Alright.
Okay, before you guys go on, I'm going to stop this. Okay, recording of part 2. Go on.
It is a semantic argument. Only if you don't know what a metaphor, an analogy, or a thought experiment is, or what the word semantic means, or straw man means.
What was that?
I just want to point out that the flying spaghetti monster is not a thought experiment.
Yeah, you actually. It's not. It wasn't supposed to be that you take it seriously. What does it mean?
It's a thought experiment if you have a level of intelligence lower than the ankle socks of a particularly small beetle. In a corner.
No ridicule.
Yeah.
No. But even the lay people that popularize this, they do it to mock religion because they think the ideas of religion are stupid. That's why they use the flying spaghetti monster. A lot of anti-theists love using this. It's not. It's supposed to be a serious argument.
Let's just keep it at that. It's just he says we don't, or specifically Jacob doesn't understand the meaning of the quote-unquote argument, but it seems that he's just simply ignorant of what it actually is.
Well, it seems like he's projecting. It seems like he's ignorant of it, and obviously projecting onto Jacob.
Exactly. He's appealing to his own authority as if he knows something that Jacob doesn't, which obviously is just false.
Okay, I think we should move on. I think we should move on. That's the point.
Yeah,
Yep.
All right, let's go.
Continue.
To the point where it is a semantic argument, like you did. Because if you're one other thing I want to point out. The Flying Spaghetti Monster is a parody. Somewhat amusing parody, but a parody nonetheless. No, it isn't. The Flying Spaghetti Monster is called satire. It's a sarcastic sort of metaphor for political parody. It is not a parody.
What was that?
Parody is interchangeable with satire.
Satire is the highest literary expression of comedy. So, parody, parody is a type of satire. So,
parody is where you take an exaggerated form of something to satirize it.
What I was saying to Jacob last night about this, we were talking about that, is that, this guy doesn't know the difference between satire and a parody. I mean, you look at Mel Brooks' movie. It's most certainly satire, but it's satire done as parody. I mean, good lord.
You can use parody to satirize, like how Stuart Lee's. I'm trying to tongue-tied. How Stuart Lee takes an exaggerated form of the rhetoric and implied values of Top Kid to satirize the rhetoric and applied to values of doctors.
Right.
That they use parody as a tool to satirize.
Alright, anyone want to make one last statement before we move on?
It's a shame to have to okay, I'll say the one.
Yeah, I'd like to just simply mention that it seems to me, at least, I'm completely convinced that he absolutely has no idea what the role of the spaghetti monster argument, satire, comedy, all the things that he calls it, is actually what the role actually is in this whole discussion, because he changes it from one thing to the other. Is he saying that his argument is a parody? Is he saying that his argument is an analogy? Is he saying that his argument is a satire? What is it?
Very good point, and I completely agree.
He doesn't seem to know what his own argument is. He seems to be, just at a loss of what he's actually saying.
As we say in the South, he's a bit full of piss and vinegar, and he seems like a bit like he's too over-eager to combat the evils of religion.
I like vinegar.
Alright, we're going to continue then, because I think we said enough on this part.
Yep. What experiment? Now, the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster is parodying religious organizations, which in itself is political satire. You don't know what you're talking about.
It doesn't answer any one part of the universe.
It's not supposed to. That's not what that argument's for.
Let me give you understanding of what we are claiming God, what God is. We're claiming that higher intelligence, a higher intelligent agent creating every universe all the way to our solar systems to the Earth. That is what we're claiming that God is. That is what we call God. By the end of the day, when you're trying to compare God to the flying spaghetti monster, you are playing a semantic game. Because what we are calling God, you're calling Santa and the flying spaghetti monster.
No, who you are claiming is God, we are claiming is the flying spaghetti monster. You're not claiming a general God. You're claiming Yahweh Elohim. That is not a general God. That is a specific God. Jehovah, Yahweh Elohim, I am that I am, whatever you want to call him, you're claiming that God. That is who this flying spaghetti monster argument
Stop it.
is against.
Could I say something?
Yeah.
Where is he getting that from? Where is he getting the whole deal about, pretty much, it seems to me like he's just assuming that you, Jacob, were talking about, the Judeo-Christian God rather than just a generalized concept of God.
The thing is,
wait, go ahead.
even if we were, even if someone did claim that these arguments proved the Judeo-Christian God, that would still make the flying spaghetti monster would still be an invalid analogy because it doesn't meet because it's not timeless or exists elsewhere. If you wanted to, I'm just annoyed about how he doesn't seem to realise that.
Yeah, we seem to be repeating the same.
I think we're repeating this again here, because I think we went over this already.
Okay.
Alright, my bad.
It's alright, I think we should move on then.
If you want to say that God didn't create the universe, and say that the flying spaghetti monster or Santa created the universe, you need to demonstrate that by philosophical proofs.
This is where
Now, I would recommend a podcast by Jimmy Deacon that does a very good job of boiling this really ridiculous argument to its really absurd notions. I don't agree with him in terms of the legality of teaching intelligent design, but in terms of his point about the flying spaghetti monster, I think it's a valid point.
Well, since I agree that if the argument did say what you say it's saying, it would be wrong, I'm going to go ahead and pass.
Can I just say something here?
What was that? What was that, Philo?
That was me, Philo. I just wanted to say something which might be repeated at the end of this session anyway, is that he wants to, as I mentioned before, he seems to want to continue the argument, but it's quite pointless, as most of you theists, and maybe even atheists here would agree with me, to continue onto the fine points of theology or attributes of God if one doesn't even accept that there is a God. And simply saying, I agree, let's move on, there is a God, but still maintaining the idea of there is no God, while in the argument saying, okay, I grant you that, is not going to get you anywhere, because you don't have in that position and understand the continuation of the argument, because in your mind still, that God doesn't exist, that God doesn't exist. So it's quite pointless. You see what I'm trying to say?
Exactly, actually.
I want to say, did he just say that he was going to actually avoid watching the podcast?
He never said anything about it. He just said I'll pass.
No, he meant this point.
Well, if there's no objection that, in fact, were he not to listen to arguments against his own, I mean, if that podcast offered made valid arguments, then why not listen to it?
Yeah, it's only an hour long, so...
This reluctance from him actually...
Maybe he just thought this too.
No, I think he meant pass as in this point. He was passing just that point and was moving on in the video.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I got from it.
Okay. Well, it kind of gives some people the impression that he wasn't going to listen to it in the first place. I don't know. That might be the impression.
I'd say that was implied, but not directly though. It's a bit ambiguous.
Okay, well that's something that you can ask him. And something
implicit versus explicit.
We don't want to put words in circles.
Yes.
Right. He can clarify later or after you watch this recording. So let's just move on.
That's also misrepresented. All right.
We continue now. That summarizes how I feel about the whole comparison thing.
Why are you always so Pacific? Why can't you be Mediterranean or even Caribbean?
Simply saying that this is not a mere matter of speculation, that there's more than a tiny bit of evidence on the table. But is he saying this for what? Evidence for a beginning of the universe. Yes, we know that. Well, that's what I'm offering in this first argument, is the evidence. But why? Because the beginning doesn't imply a God. It does if the first premise is true, that whatever begins to exist has a cause. It logically follows. Yeah, but the cause hasn't got to be God. Well, remember I gave an argument for thinking that this cause is timeless, spaceless, immaterial, enormously powerful, and personal. I think it's the computer. Well, that was computers are designed by people. No, this is a self-designing computer. Timeless. Well, that's a contradiction in terms. Why is it timeless? What's contradictory about it? A computer has to function. It takes. Oh no, this is a special computer. Yeah, but it has to be logically coherent. Oh, it's logically coherent. Yes, you have to be logically. Oh no, and besides, amazing. No, besides, it would have to be, as I said, a personal being. No. A computer is a physical object. Oh, no. Okay. See, what you're doing is you're actually, what you're calling a computer is really God. A non-physical, it's just another word if you rob it of all the attributes that make it a computer.
Hold on a second. I got. Mike just came on, Cartesian theist. I'm going to answer the call, okay?
Yeah, exactly.
That's fine.
Real quick. He just came on. Greetings. Oh,
Greetings, sir.
Greetings.
Hi.
Salutations.
Hey.
Hello there. This is actually being recorded right now.
Welcome to hell.
Will you introduce yourself since you just joined the call? It's just being recorded.
I take it that means me.
Yes.
Hello, my name is Mike, a.k.a. Cartesian Bitch.
Okay, then. And as I mentioned in part 1, I will put this person's YouTube channel into the description box.
We already went, Mike, just to give you a quick recap, we already went through about almost 12 minutes of his first video, so we already covered most of his points in that part of the video. So.
Okay, so the devastated burger analogy has been dealt with then.
Yes, he didn't really go over that one. How much more have we got?
Yes.
All right.
Devastating burger analogy. I like that.
How much more of the video have they got?
We shall continue. Because we just went over the William Lane Craig clip.
Yeah, I mentioned that actually before you actually played it.
Which clip? Yeah, he also you can also see that clip.
Okay. I think we should continue then.
Yes.
All right, let's continue.
Say what you want about William Lane Craig.
He's a moronic, disingenuous fucking dipshit. You can say
I
that.
agree.
They're not an argument to make.
If by cheap shot you mean not a shot at all, cheered on by people who are equally fucking moronic, then yeah, it's a cheap shot.
But he's right.
Well, stop.
What's that?
Stop. I feel insulted because he calls William Lane Craig here a moronic, whatever he said, and that people who find his argumentation convincing are equally as stupid.
That's kind of a genetic fallacy. It's not even the fact that he made poor arguments. It's William Lane Craig, and the people that agree with him are moronic dipshits.
Now,
that's not fair.
Now, this is something that I had to come across because I happen to be a bit of a fan of William Lane Craig after listening to a lot of his his presentations. And I've noticed that among many atheists, not all of them, but many of them, they sit there, bad mouthing William Lane Craig, but all I've heard is just character assassinations and attacks. And yes, I know this discussion is not about William Lane Craig. I'm just saying this guy's following the same type of rhetoric. Calling it Craig, never giving any proof.
To claim that he's rational, then he has to give us, at the very least, give us a refutation of any of the points made by William Lane Craig or any of the people that support his form of argumentation.
But that's the discussion.
Yeah.
Video.
Claim that moronic dipshit. The onus of evidence is kind of on you to demonstrate that, and he didn't really do that.
I would like to just interject that if Craig's arguments are wrong, then they're wrong. If they're right, then they're right. And that doesn't make you a dipshit if you're wrong. It just means you're wrong. So go ahead and do that. There's no need for insult. I mean, it's just vexing.
I think. Hold on. Let me make a quick comment. I don't think it's not a good idea to resort to insults, because if you're going to resort to doing insults, it kind of gives the audience the impression that you run into a corner in a discussion or a debate.
Well, not always. I mean,
not always, of course, but
you find it convincing. It's a show of I would think play on bullying. People are afraid of you and think highly of you because you dare to make fun of this person. But it seems that the whole start of this episode with Esplin started when he said that atheists have the domain of rationality, and what he actually means with that is completely I'm completely ignorant on the fact, but he doesn't even. I have not heard any sound or even a good argument. Well, that's the same thing. I mean, I have not heard an argument from him at all, really. Not anything that I consider as an argument.
I actually brought up the argument to him in the comments section of one of his videos. It's like if two atheists fight amongst each other and the atheists have the moral high ground, you know, if they're fighting amongst themselves, then who has the moral high ground in that case? For example, this whole race issue that came up with Hey Ruka and everybody else. Between me and Hey Ruka, who has the moral or the intellectual high ground? And he was like, well, it's the person that's not the racist who's using reason and logic. And I was like, yeah, but she's also using her reason and logic. It's flawed, but you don't really address that. You just say that it's because of her position that she's wrong, not why she holds that position.
He says he addresses that in part 3, but we'll discuss that later. So.
All right.
Well, he just seems to be using insults and name calling in lieu of contents and wit.
I think we've spent too much time on this, and if we want to actually, and if you want to discuss this, we should leave it for another video.
Let's move on from this part because I think we've spent way too much time on this part.
Just point out that add-ons are not acceptable substitutes for arguments.
Let's move on. We're taking too much time here.
Be 100% right there. No, he isn't. If you're going to compare God to, like, say, Santa Claus or the Flying Spaghetti Monster.
Okay. Pause it for a moment.
You're going to answer that?
Pause it. All right. He did a cut in when you said that William Lane Craig was 100% right. He did a cut in saying no, he's not, and then cut back to your video. Okay.
Previous point that we made.
Yes.
And this is another,
yes, that he
this
should.
is yet another problem I have. This is yet another problem I have with Esplin. It's something that's prevalent throughout all of his videos. He makes these assertions, pretty much just I'm right, you're wrong assertions, and just moves on. Doesn't ever explain how or why he's right.
Well, hold on. To be fair, he did say last night he doesn't claim that he's always right. He's not claiming that he's right about a specific position. He's just saying that this argument's wrong, and all this stuff. But I get what you're saying. Like he just makes.
It's just I agree with him in any assertion that William Lane Craig is not 100% right in that video because I doubt the Kalam cosmological argument. That's another. But again, we don't want to go into that.
We weren't even discussing the Kalam in that video.
Yeah.
I would say that it's just assertion fallacy to assert these things as if they're brute facts. As if others agree with them. I'm sure there are people that agree with them, but there are people that don't agree with them. So don't assert this as if it's a brute fact that we all have to bow down to. Kidding me?
All right, I think we should move on.
And pretty much deriving the meaning behind the word God and the meaning behind the word Flying Spaghetti Monster.
The point of the argument is actually the point you're making. It's to show you that all you have is that it is timeless and that it needs to be powerful enough to create the universe. That is all.
That is why I do not take comparisons of God of, say, Santa or the Flying Spaghetti Monster or the Tooth Fairy. Because I consider it intellectual laziness.
The reason you do not take comparisons of God to the Flying Spaghetti Monster is not because we are intellectually lazy. It's because you are intellectually unsophisticated.
Okay. Stop it.
First of all, Thunderbolt, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I don't think you were saying that we, quote unquote, for his definition of, I guess, all of atheism.
No.
That you were in any way saying that we were intellectually lazy, but rather that you were specifically saying that he was being intellectually lazy by arguing from a flawed comparison.
Yes, that's my point. So,
all right.
I'm not saying all atheists use this argument or that all atheists are intellectually lazy. In fact, there are many atheists who are intellectually sophisticated. So.
Right.
Yes.
And, there's also plenty of atheists that are, in fact, intellectually lazy. Perfect example, Hey Ruga. I don't want to look up sources. Look it up yourself. I'm not your research tool.
Right, because he just made a fair assertion there, just accused me of being intellectually unsubstantiating that.
That's not the first insult that he made in this whole thing, but we can comment on that one.
Alright, I think we should move on then.
We seriously want to argue that it wasn't a higher intelligence that we call God that created the universe, but was instead either a guy in a red suit or a big giant flying spaghetti monster that created the universe? You have to demonstrate that's the case, and that wasn't a God that created the universe, but instead was either Santa Claus or the flying spaghetti monster. Good luck with that.
I will admit right there that was a rhetorical joke, and so, but you didn't take it. Hold on, let me continue.
You don't actually believe in a flying spaghetti monster, hence satire or thought experiment, if you want to go back to the first one. We don't have to show shit. You have to show why this all-powerful entity that created the universe is specifically Yahweh Elohim. That is the point. Your arguments at best get you to deism. You're using special thinking to jump the gap from deism to theism. The thing is that we can use special thinking to jump the gap from theism.
Wait, what was that?
Oh, I just moaned and said, oh no.
Alright,
we're going around it.
The thing I got to say about this is backwards.
Part 2 is almost over, so we're almost done with this one. So.
They're granting you out of debate courtesy to flying spaghetti monster, just as you seem to not have the capacity to show that Yahweh Elohim is the God that created everything. We just don't have the capacity or the desire to show that the flying spaghetti monster is the creator of the universe. Until you show us evidence for your specific magical fairy tale monster, creature, capricious thing, we're not going to show you ours. So get to work on that, and good luck with that.
Okay, that's the end of this video, so we're going to move on to part 3.
Actually, let's see.
Just finish the conference on that I can't. Was it
Someone's breaking up really bad.
Hold on.
Okay, everybody's going through Jacob as a loop.
Oh. Wait, what's going on?
Yeah. Turn down your mic sensitivity a bit.
Let me stop my recording real quick, okay?
All right.
Okay. I was just gonna make just a comment about that, but just using connotatively negative language that your fairy monster thing. That's just a subtle appeal to ridicule when you do that. It's like calling Jesus a zombie. It doesn't get us anywhere.
Right.
Why add that in? It's just a kind of
just a random collection of words strung together in a way that makes no sense. Rather than to, it's just. Well, yeah, it's basically what you're saying. It's appeal to emotion-laden ridicule. It's also an ad hominem in that it doesn't address the what's being argued at all.
Right. Actually, if I might make a particular statement. First of all, I hate when he uses the phrase Yahweh Elohim because I think those are two different names.
They are.
They are. And second, when he compares. When he says that arguments for the existence of a general theistic idea of God are the same as the ones that demonstrate the Christian God to be true, he's doing exactly what a creationist does when they compare abiogenesis to evolution. Sure, they're related under the branch of biology, but they're not the same theory. Those are two different fields, or subfields, I should say, altogether. Likewise, with the arguments for the existence of a general theistic idea of God, and that it's the Christian God, those are two completely different sets of arguments. And as an atheist, you know, I may not agree with those arguments, but if you're going to combat your opponents, you know, in the name of anything, don't make shit up about your opponents, and don't just assume things about your opponents.
Right. I constantly fight that on YouTube. You know.
The fact that the general arguments we're discussing fall under the penumbra of natural theology, whereas specific arguments for, say, Christianity falls under the category of, say, like revealed theology. I think that's the term that really makes you something.
Right. When you do what he does, it makes more bullshit for the rest of us to have to mop up.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I would just like to give this like an analogy, even if you were right, and let's say all of his arguments against the idea of God were sound, and the flying spaghetti monster analogy was accurate. Even then, the way he's going about it by being insulting like that, I mean, if I was doing like a complicated math equation and I'm way off, what is the person going to say in order to get my attention? Hey, do you mind if I help you with that equation? I think you're off. Or you go up to them and say, hey, you little fuck, hey, you're full of shit with that one. I mean, you really think it, you stupid retard? Let me help you with that. The guy's going to say, get the fuck away from me. It's not like, I mean, come on.
Yeah. But the thing is, you can make anything sound ridiculous like that. I mean, you could say, like, I could say, how atheist, you believe that nothing magically exploded and then turned into self-fabricating plots, turned into dinosaurs, turned into flying rats, and blah, blah, blah. I mean, this is completely absurd. I believe I probably actually believe.
No one would want to listen to you either. You just said, well, you believe magic and everything came from nothing. I mean, why? If you said that, is anyone going to listen to you? No.
All right. I'd like to mention something I found very strange with this, or an underlying kind of position that he has concerning argument for Christianity. There is no one argument that will get you from nothing to the existence of God. For example, let's take Descartes with his doubts. You can't get from just the doubts of your own existence to the theistic Christian God with all his attributes. And he seems to think that if no such argument exists, therefore such a God does not exist, which seems to me very strange.
There's no unified spiritual theory on, you know, the existence of God. I mean, I've been reading The Case for Faith by Lee Strobel, and that shows Lee Strobel's move from atheism to theism as something that had occurred in multiple stages. So
exactly, and the arguments presented by natural theology are arguments for specific attributes, and the cosmological arguments are primarily to show that there is either an explanation of the universe that is its own explanation, or that there is some kind of cause which is outside of the space-time continuum, which we haven't. But there is no, it would seem very, very ad hoc if we would create an argument which will go from doubt of one's existence to the Christian God. I think that would even be impossible to grasp for the majority of people.
Okay. I think we're going to move on to... Wait, all right. Daniel, are you...
Okay, does anybody have anything else?
Because I think we need to move on to all three now.
One more thing, and just because I noticed this, and maybe because I've seen a couple of videos, but I seem to equivocate the way that this guy's presenting arguments almost on the level of bionic dance. I mean, he hasn't really gone that far to describe his arguments.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I just felt that.
Let's go on.
Okay, then, before we move on to part 3.
Bionic dance is just plain fucking retarded.
Okay.
Okay, can I choose for fun? One last thing.
Yeah, we'll stop with those.
Okay, does anybody have anything else to say?
I want to say something.
on this video?
Yeah, can I?
I'm good.
Yeah, I think we should move on now.
Okay. Hold on.
I think Mike wants to say something. He's trying to say something.
All right, let Mike say one. Let Mike have the last word on this video. Then we're going to move on. Okay.
Okay. I'll just jump in. One last thing, just really, really quickly. I think we ought to set him the challenge that he did say that he thinks the flying spaghetti monster is a good analogy. He called it that, a good analogy to the hypothesis of God. So the challenge he needs to be set is that if it is a good analogy, then he has to prove it's not a category error.
Hold
he
on.
has to show that it's an equal footing. And
Hold on.
unfortunately, the supposed idiot William Lane Craig, along with a lot of other philosophers, have already demonstrated that the flying spaghetti monster hypothesis is a category error. It wouldn't be a good contention for, say, being a candidate for a first cause. So that's the challenge he needs to meet.
All right. Is that all, everyone?
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to stop the recording now.
Hello, YouTube. This
Hold
is
on.
part 3 of my response to Thunderbolt 94's video.
Stop.
This part...
Wait, what's that?
Stop.
Fallacy already.
I'm joking, okay?
Okay. Do me a favor. Start that from the beginning,
Okay, that's fine.
because it was only a few seconds in.
That's fine. Trust me, we'll be very...
This is part 3 of my response to Thunderbolt 94's video. This part, I have a big problem with, mainly because it almost seems like you forgot the last 2 videos I made. Either that or you didn't get to see them. I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt and assume that you simply forgot. I clarified what I meant by domain of rationality before. It was a failure of mine to articulate the point. Now you're strawmanning me.
Stop.
Wait, what was that?
That was Philo. I'd like to, if we have time,
Now,
I'd like
spend the
to
rest
take
of
it
the
explain to us
I'm sorry.
what.
Repeat that. Milo, can you repeat that? I'm sorry.
Yeah, no problem. What I said was I'd like you to explain to us, and specifically to me, because I've never really followed Esplin. I've seen these 3 videos quickly. But when he said the domain of rationality, he said he didn't explain himself enough. Now he did. And what does he mean? And how do you believe you are strawmanning him, or how does he perceive your position to be strawmanning him?
Okay, basically, when he in the last video that I was responding to, he admitted that. Sorry, let me repeat myself. I'm having a brain fright right at the moment. So he wanted to say that he was going to avoid using the term domain of rationality because he wanted to make the argument that in the particular instance, and in his case, the theist-atheist debate, he's saying that the methods they are coming to the conclusion are rational, while theist methods are not rational because many of their arguments are not valid. And I was trying to make the point that, yes, I acknowledge that you no longer hold to this, but I wanted to clarify what I was talking about and how I perceived how many atheists like Esplin were using the so-called domain of rationality argument. That make sense?
Does make
Kind of. Yeah, continue. I mean, if no one has anything else to say, that was. I just wished some clarification.
Okay, that's fine. Let me continue.
Covering more about your understanding of rationality. Now, I know you say in the video that you're going to stop using the term the domain of rationality.
Yes, I stopped using that term because of this exact problem. Because of people thinking that I'm saying that all atheists are rational, that they're rational because they're atheists, or that they're atheists because they're rational. That's not what I was saying. I clarified it.
What was that?
That's exactly what he said in the first video. That atheists hold the domain of rationality.
Yeah,
which
I mean, you and I know that.
Atheists are rational. He's making a complete fucking backpedal at this point.
Yeah, and I also need to mention that but maybe he'll go on to that, I can't remember later on, but he simply says, well, okay, to be an atheist is not equivalent to being rational. That's what he's saying. But is he saying that to be a theist is no longer to be irrational by definition?
Last night he said that he's talking about the methods they use, which I'll clarify again. He says that the methods that they, as an atheist, are coming to the conclusion are rational, while theist methods are not rational because many of their arguments are not valid. That's what he said.
That's just taking
the question.
Yeah, it's like, how do you know? I mean, the God hypothesis, I don't mean that to be offensive to any of the theists in the room, so
we're not offensive.
I genuinely apologize.
We might not agree.
The answer to the question of whether God exists or not is an untestable hypothesis. So when somebody uses their rationality to come to a conclusion on that, or speaking in scientific terms, they come up with their own particular hypothesis as to what the outcome is. How can you know somebody's methods are actually rational or irrational?
I also want to bring something else up, as well as the fact that there are many atheists as well as theists who will arrive at that conclusion based on emotional reasoning.
Yes.
All right, I think we should continue.
Okay. Yes.
I'll clarify in this video a little later.
I want to cover this one more time so you understand where I'm coming from.
I understand where you're coming from. I even agree with what you're saying. You don't understand where I'm coming from, or you choose not to understand it, or you're ignoring it.
When you say something along the lines that atheists have the domain of rationality, that does not determine whether you are right.
I agree. You're absolutely right. I never claimed it did. Let's say you have two people. One person is a normal person who's really good at math. You give them both two incredibly complicated math problems. One of them uses logic, his mathematic skills, and arguably rationality to weed out the less likely answers in a multiple choice question. Let's say he has 5 choices, all very similar. He weeds out all the wrong ones, but of the 2 that are 1 number off, he chooses the wrong one, simply because he's not paying attention. He's rational in his decision, but in that particular instance, he was off by 1 number. The guy next to him is a schizophrenic who hears voices. Now, this guy saw the answer he chose. He doesn't know he saw it, because as he was switching, he happened to see it. His brain picked up on that. Right before he was going to pick the same answer, a voice in his head told him, no, it's not C, it's B. He gets it right. Now, does the fact that the first guy was rational make him right? Yeah. No, it doesn't. He's wrong.
What was that, Brendan?
Okay, seems to me, maybe I got the term wrong, but it just seems to me like he's begging the question. He's putting rationality versus, I guess you could say, religious thought he's comparing it to somebody being crazy. I mean, that seems to be more like just making fun of the whole issue than really giving a valid, rational explanation.
Well, he's asking the question about warranted belief. Do we come to know the things that we know by a sound way, like Alvin Plantinga argues in his book Warranted Christian Belief? He argues that, I could believe that 4 plus 3 is 7 because I fell on the ground with my head on a rock, and then I just came to the conclusion 4 plus 3 is 7. That's a conclusion, but that's not a rational way, or that's not a good way to come to that conclusion. So one is not warranted to believe it. And what he seems to be saying here is that people who have religious beliefs or believe in Christianity, in this example with Jacob, come to that conclusion through an unwarranted way. Well, my question is, how does Jacob come to the... That's my cat.
Just think of the one that comes with the inverse of this. The man that just happens to get it wrong on all other questions, he gets it right, and he's still considered rational, even though he didn't get it right, and his methoding in that respect was flawed, and yet he's still considered rational. But before, he said theists are irrational because they may have tried to apply logic, but they get it wrong. So which is it? Are you considered rational when you apply inferences and they're flawed, or if you get it right? I mean, it's setting them everywhere.
Because he's saying, like, the religious people who are analogous to schizophrenia, that, like, that was something that I was going to say, and that's a good point, is how, like, for example, William A. Craig uses, like, deductive reasoning, which is exactly analogous to his example of, say, the mathematician using, like, logic and mathematical skills to... So, therefore, it's basically, well, what's the word, category error.
And he also seems to say, the mathematician uses his knowledge of math, uses logic, and arguably rationality. Well, I consider logic to be a part of rationality. And actually, I believe logic to be one of the fundamental things within rationality. So, what is rationality? When he says rationality, what does he mean? He seems to be using it in a different place.
It's a point that a number of people, I think, such as Brandon, has made, that he doesn't, well, he doesn't define his terms, and he doesn't seem to understand his terms either. Awkward silence.
Alright, you want me to continue, or does anyone want to say one last point?
I got nothing. I agree with everything that was said.
Okay.
I just wanted to finish on the point of warranted belief. When he says, or he tries to compare people of religious positions to be schizophrenic, he has to show that you, Jacob, as he's talking about, that you come to the conclusion that the Christian God exists by way of something which makes it unwarranted for you to believe it. And it seems that he's saying you're not using rationality. And I believe that probably 99% of the people that watch your videos that are intellectually honest can see that you use, at least insofar as what you claim, you use rationality. So the burden is on him to show that you are unwarranted to believe what you believe.
Right, I completely agree with you there.
I do have something to say with that. The problem is,
I also want to say something as well. Is also the fact that, you know, he might also just, maybe as a little footnote, that he might also have to prove that, you know, you come to these conclusions based on the fact that you hear a little voice in your head. Now burn them all. Burn them all!
I think that... Well, I think that if you were to call him out on that, though, he would probably say something like, "Oh, I was only being figurative."
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, or you will say, "Well, I have nothing to prove." But then he can't say that people who are schizophrenic. Then he just simply has to say, "Well, I'm ignorant of your position, and I can't say anything about it."
Right. I think we should move on. I think we've spent enough on this point.
So all he'll end up just saying, "Oh, you're misrepresenting me," which seems to be one of his key defenses.
Alright, we're going to continue now.
But does the fact that the other guy happened to guess the right answer make him not a completely irrational person in those circumstances? That is to say, in that specific instance, let's say when he's on his medicine, he's perfectly fine and he's perfectly rational. Irrelevant. In that particular instance, even if he's right, the methods by which he arrived at his conclusion are fundamentally flawed. So yeah, I agree with you.
In one of your previous videos, EvoGen videos made a very, very good point.
This is where I mentioned you, man.
Awesome. Have to address this if you're going to claim that atheists are somehow more rational than theists. I'm going to repeat what he said. He says this: but how do you know which one is being rational? Because you're just stating that one of them is rational and the other isn't. And it really has nothing to do with how well constructed or sound their arguments are. It's based on who's making which argument. It's called a genetic fallacy. Atheists aren't above fallacious reasoning. You never address that. You have been committing a genetic fallacy. Just because someone is an atheist, or just because someone disbelieves in God, that doesn't automatically mean they have the domain of rationality, as you used to call it. It does not mean that just because someone believes in a different way of gaining knowledge about the world, it does not mean they are less rational because they believe in something that is supernatural. That is not how rationality works. Rationality is not a atheist-specific thing. It is a tool used by humanity to reach towards conclusions.
You know, I did respond to this. I haven't made the genetic fallacy. Not once. I did not say all atheists are rational. I did not say they are immune to fallacious arguments. I said in this particular instance, the methods by which they are coming to their conclusions are...
That is the genetic fallacy.
And he's not telling the truth. He did say atheists are rational, basically.
Okay, I mean, it's asserting that they are. I mean, who says that you're in the right here? He's just a...
Not to mention the fact that, you know, some atheists do come to these conclusions based on emotional reasoning.
Mm-hmm. This is the fact that he is using the genetic fallacy. The genetic fallacy is when you try to argue that someone came to the... It basically attacks how they came to the conclusion. I'm just kind of like a bit nonplussed how he doesn't seem to realise that he is still making the genetic fallacy.
He also never actually addressed it. That was bullshit. He pretty much made another genetic fallacy, and then when I was like, okay, that doesn't really answer my question, and that still doesn't avoid the fact that you made a genetic fallacy, he's like, I'll get back to you on that. That's a lie.
Right. And we could continue then. Unless anyone has anything else to say.
Yeah, I'll probably say this right now. For anyone who's listening to this, the Dutch philosopher has now left.
Okay, that's fine. He can... Right. Okay.
Well, it's more fun for us.
We'll continue.
Rational. All atheists? No, I'm sure some atheists just don't give a damn. Again, deja vu, I said this in another video to you. Either you did not watch that video or you do not care. I clarified this. I'm not saying all atheists are rational. I'm not saying all God-bothers are irrational. What I'm saying is that the methods by which you're attaining your conclusion, the methods that are getting you from point A to point B are fallacious. Ergo, in this particular instance, we are in the sphere of rationality and you are in the sphere of irrationality. Not because of the conclusion that you
It looks like he's moving the goalposts.
Yeah.
He's stringing together a series of words in a way that doesn't make any rational or coherent sense.
He's just kind of assuming that he's in the right, which is in assuming that Jacob is in the wrong. Which is just
making my question as to whether Jacob's reasoning is how he reaches that conclusion is fallacious.
He doesn't seem to understand. It's just, I can't get a sense of what he's actually arguing, because he keeps jumping from, I'm not saying this, well, I'm saying this, where they seem to be mutually, contradictory terms, like, I'm not saying that, all atheists are rational, but I am saying that we do have that, all atheists, and atheists have the domain of rational.
Guilty until proven innocent. I mean, Jacob, you're wrong until you can prove to me. I'm saying I'm going to assert you're fallacious. You're guilty until proven innocent.
Right, because
come on.
Because here he's trying to say that the methodology that atheists use to reach their conclusion that God doesn't exist is not as fallacious as, say, theists who use the same methodology to come to the conclusion that God exists. So if atheists and theists are using the same philosophical methodology to reach their conclusions, then how does that prove that one is more rational than the other?
Right. And he doesn't really get into the methodology. In addition to this just being a bare assertion, I really think that it's nothing more than just an ad hom. It's just I'm going to label your methodology as illogical, irrational, and that's the end of it.
And don't explain it.
The insult as the argument.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, we're going to get
he never wants to, he doesn't give specific examples of Jacob's methodology at all. This is an argument from analogy. He's like, this is you give an analogy and then asserts, and then just barely asserts that that's what Jacob did. Like, that's an it's like, how does that follow?
Right, let's continue then.
Okay.
Hold on.
Reached, but because of the methods through which you reached that conclusion, your methods are fallacious, irrational, and wrong. All three of those things are separate things. They're not contingent on each other, but they all apply in this case. No, I was not making the genetic fallacy. Yes, I did respond to him.
Fuck, no, you didn't.
What specific issues
They apply how?
Wait, what was that, Chris?
They're not contingent upon one another?
Well, he said three different things about Jake's reasoning, and he did not illustrate how these things applied to his reasoning. He just said that they did.
For his conclusion to be wrong, your methodology has to be flawed. Ergo, they are contingent upon one another.
Mm-hmm. Right. Does anyone have any other points?
Ergo.
Does anyone have any other points?
Concordantly.
All right. If anyone has any other points, we're going to move on. All right.
Move on.
All right.
Christians define faith, and Christians rightfully have defined faith as belief, faith based on knowledge.
And I'm saying, no, you haven't. That's how you're doing it in this argument. Christian faith is faith based on revealed knowledge. Revealed knowledge is knowledge that is privy to you or the people whose testimony you're accepting, and nobody else.
You seem to have a big problem that you continually claim that faith is not based on knowledge. That is the point. When Christians believe that faith is based on knowledge, they are saying that their faith is based on the current data, such as scripture, such as history, testimony, and so on and so on. That is what they would consider knowledge. And based on that knowledge, they would say they would put their faith on that as being reliable.
And I'm telling you, you're wrong whether you consider that knowledge or not. It isn't. It's revealed knowledge. It's knowledge.
What was that?
Where he starts going off like, but it's not. I just got one thing to say. To quote the Big Lebowski, well, that's just like your opinion, man.
it's all based on what your definition of evidence is. Evidence is usually interchangeable with justification, and that is a justification. You may think it's a poor one, but that is a justification. It goes more into just, it's not just there's this hearsay stuff, and I'm just going to put my faith in authority. No. Revealed knowledge has to do with personal experience at all.
Right.
I mean,
Also, how is scripture and stuff? How is that on revealed knowledge?
Yeah, I think he's making what's the word? It's a faulty analogy, because scripture isn't purely revelational. It's not like, I mean, something that would be purely revelational would be something like Gnosticism, where they believe in like some special revealed knowledge that's only accessible to the initiated. Whereas Scripture is something that's free, is like readily available to be scrutinized.
As a matter of fact, there are multiple scriptures that refer to the truth of God's word being evidence to all. So.
Well, another point also is that evidence is just a part of logos. So if in Christian understanding, and he's not taking into account of ethos, and many Christians would say, okay, we believe that the claims of Christianity are true.
Taking into account the
Wait. Let me finish my point real quick, then I'll let you go. Many Christians would say, we believe that the logos of Christianity is true because the people who are making the claims that Christianity is true, because they have very strong ethos regarding these claims. And when people are making, I'll give you a couple of examples. Let's say, like, the apostles, church fathers, so on. Like, these are part of, like, testimony, documents, etc. Christians are basing their trust on these documents because these are evidence that are backed up by strong ethos of the people who are claiming that these documents are reliable.
And don't forget, in Christianity, you also have the aspect of personal revelation, what Christians normally refer to as witness of the Holy Spirit. This is just accepting somebody's authority.
Right, that's a good point, too.
Something else I think.
Okay.
Sorry, go ahead.
Greek basically, the word that's translated into faith from the Greek is the word pistis, which ironically refers to itself as an pistis, LOL. When pistis is trust of an authority, but furthermore, when you get into the definition, it's the trust on authority that has proved themselves. And how does an authority prove itself? You need evidence that the authority is trustworthy. This is the fact that if you did an ounce of research into the contextual world that the New Testament was written in, then you know this. It's frustrating to hear people not understand what faith is, because when they say that when the New Testament writers use the word faith, they're saying we trust the authority of say God because we have evidence. Well, what they believe is the evidence. I mean, obviously you could say, well, that you could disagree that the evidence supports thing, but that's not. I'm sorry, I've lost my train of thought.
I think I know where you were going to go next.
Welcome to my world.
As an atheist, obviously, I doubt certain historical claims, certain claims to reality. But what I don't think Esplin gets is that doubt or skepticism is not the same thing as disproof. Sure, there are reasons to, doubt the validity of something. There are reasons to possibly even, say, well, this here doesn't follow, or this doesn't make enough sense to me, or this isn't, enough evidence for me to presuppose that X, Y, or Z actually happen, exists, whatever have you, whatever claim you're talking about. But that's not tantamount to disproof. And whatever conclusion I come out of from my doubt or skepticism, I still admit that there is a possibility that my doubt or skepticism is ill-placed. I could still be very wrong.
Exactly, and that's where we're coming from. We're talking about. What was that, Daniel?
I was just saying how, like, even if you disagree with Christianity, there is still evidence available to be analysed, whether it be the New Testament documents. I mean, that counts as evidence. It may be invalid evidence, but it's still evidence.
Exactly. Thank you.
Right.
I mean, you can argue about the quality of that evidence all day, but the fact of the matter is that evidence has still been positive.
That's why we have
God, but the soundness of that evidence is called into question.
Right. That's why we have criticism to analyse the validity of ancient documents like the New Testament.
And that's why we have exegesis when it comes to it's a critical study of Scripture.
I mean, when you read, even like if you read the Chicago Statement of biblical inerrancy, they maintain that you need to study like history and the relevant context, and they're inerrantists.
Even if you agree with inerrancy, that's still a valid point, you know?
Like, they believe that Scripture is inerrant, but they still maintain it's subject to scrutiny by taking into account extra biblical evidence.
Daniel's made the point that, you know, he's misusing the way the word is used in the New Testament, and that's quite right and valid and needs making. But there's also another point here, and that is that Christian theologians over the last 2,000 years have not defined Christian faith just as revealed knowledge. So anybody who's done any systematic theology knows that immediately in the first year of doing systematic theology, you learn that there are two types. One is special revelation. One is they're called general revelation. Special revelation refers to revealed knowledge directly or very close to directly from God, whereas general revelation is based on the world and things that you can base it around anything that's common knowledge. So this is a terrible misrepresentation of where most theologians have been.
Yeah, this is something I've mentioned before, where like there's natural theology, and then there's revealed theology.
Yes.
All right, I think we're going to get it then. Unless anyone has any last words on this part.
Strippers.
Yeah. That was funny. Okay, we're going to continue then.
Privy to the original individuals who say they spoke to God. No, that is not belief based on knowledge. Belief based on knowledge is just knowledge. It's just not. I have a book here. This is knowledge. It's an anthropology textbook. If I believe something in this book, I'm not going to call it faith. I'm just going to call it knowing shit. Because I read it in this book, and these things can be demonstrated to be the case.
Pause it.
In the beginning of this book.
What was that, Brendan?
Okay. All right.
I read it.
A person claims they talk to God. Okay. When you read a biography, especially a biography from primary sources, a person saying they talked to this person, and it's writing down what they said. There is no difference. He's equivocating. He's basically not outrightly saying it, but implying that a person who claims that he or she has talked to God is making a false a claim. You know,
the fact that claims or is delusional.
Yeah, and you can easily simply say, okay, so you know let me think. I'm trying to think of a book that from a primary source. I don't. I read mostly science fiction and fantasy, guys. So shoot. Hold me out here. Okay.
Francis Crick by Matt Ridley.
Yeah, I mean, any kind of book that we have in any of our libraries or bookstores that is written from a primary source, you can simply say the same thing using his argument. That this person didn't really talk to that person, that they were just delusional, or they were lying, you know?
I also noticed another hint of the genetic fallacy again. It's like, you know, the claims in your book are bullshit because it's your book. But my book right here, I can just believe this and call it knowing shit.
Well, he goes into a little bit more detail about this analogy that he's making. So I suggest that you guys let him just finish making this one point.
Yeah. All right, let's finish then.
The individual said that this book is made up of many authors, and all of them learn this knowledge by meditating. Then I have a problem. Then I can no longer call that knowledge because it's contingent on something called revealed knowledge, and that is faith. Faith is not knowledge or belief based on knowledge. Faith is belief based on revealed knowledge or in spite or regardless of the evidence.
Okay, can you stop that there?
Second
Yeah. What was that? Okay. Can I just say, this is horrible on so many different levels. I can't even begin. One thing to say is that his book on anthropology, he hasn't read very much anthropology. If he thinks that reading an anthropology textbook gives him direct knowledge, that's one thing. But the other thing that he's trying to suggest is that his book on anthropology is superior to, say, for example, the New Testament documents because it has some empirical basis. Now, this is another misrepresentation because if that were true, then there'd be no New Testament scholars doing any work in the field of archaeology. Now, if I can just name drop one, Peter Williams at Tyndale House in this country has done a huge amount of work on the textual documents and archaeology to see if actually something like the Acts of the Apostles actually lines up with the archaeological evidence. And there's very good news for the Acts of the Apostles, it has to be said. But, I mean, there are so many problems with where he's going here. Those are just two, and it's a car wreck.
Yeah, I mean, he obviously has never read any books that discuss the preponderance of evidence, you know, in the New Testament alone, you know, and he's basically just it's just a really flimsy argument that he's giving, you know, about scripture versus other books, you know. It still goes back to the whole deal with him saying he's basically, you know, implying that the Bible is written by people who just sat around and meditated. I mean, I'd love to know where he gets that from.
Yeah, I don't know if you will address this, but I'd like to ask if you guys already addressed the issue of knowledge. He says revealed knowledge, and this is normal knowledge. And then he qualifies that knowledge with, excuse my French, shit. Actually, he says by knowing shit. So I assume that revealed knowledge is not knowledge in the way that he tries to argue. I'm not trying to be funny at all, but
I'd like to talk on. Can I talk now?
Sorry.
I was just saying that in Lane Craig notes the difference between personal revelation to yourself and obviously arguments. The purpose of revealed knowledge or what is referred to as the conviction of the Holy Spirit, that is considered necessary warrant for yourself to believe, but it's insufficient to persuade someone else.
Exactly.
Whereas to persuade someone else, you need external evidence.
Well, I don't think we should say the word evidence, because it seems to me that Esplin's idea about knowledge has to do with empirical evidence, and he could use a book on mathematics to make his own point, but that would show that it's not simply empirical evidence that will convince him of any knowledge. So I do assume that he believes that 1 + 1 = 2, and that is pretty sound knowledge.
Well, I would like to ask Esplin, if he does believe that you can only prove something using empirical evidence, did he come to that belief through empirical evidence?
Right, because
that was the point I was trying to get to as well.
Alright. Let's finish this
video.
Alright, I think we spent enough time at this point. Let's just finish this video off and take.
Okay.
Alright, so what was I saying? We're gonna finish this video off, then comment on it, then take a break, then go on the last video after this.
Let's say, let's get rid of the in spite or regardless of the evidence. Let's say it's just a knowledge thing. I'm telling you, that's not what faith is. You can define it as that, but you're wrong. That's not what you're doing. I'm saying that the thing you're doing is not that. It is belief based on revealed knowledge that is untestable, unverifiable, and unreliable. Even if you consider, if I consider my grandmother's opinion about nuclear fusion reliable, that doesn't make it reliable. That just makes me extremely credulous. That's all. Okay, this video is running a little long, so,
Okay, that's the end of that video.
Okay.
Yeah, it's clear that he just doesn't know what belief is.
Yeah, I mean, that is not even the definition of faith. He's going by his own little. So you have to carry up on time, you know?
He used to be living in this own magical world where words mean whatever he wants them to mean.
Exactly.
Alright. Okay, we're gonna take a quick break here because I gotta use the restroom, okay?
Okay.
Alright, because after when I come back, we're gonna go to the last video after this one.
Awesome.
Alright, does anybody have anything else to say about this particular video?
We're still recording?
Yes, we're still recording.
Boobs.
cunt.
Oh, you men are so mature, you know.
Lumen of the uterus.
That's like good old fashioned.
Does anybody have something intellectual to say about this video?
I see more.
Such mature
the
men.
oviduct.
I swear.
Keep this in.
These are good to
So I will take that as a no.
It's a failed burger to his wrong sandwich.
All right. So nobody has anything to say?
Andy left.
Okay, I'm stopping. Okay, recording of part 4 is started.
Okay, let's begin then.
Hello YouTube, this is my fourth and final installment of my response to Thunderbolt 94's response to my video. At this point, he ups the ante and starts using big, complicated words like empiricism and epistemology. Yeah.
Oh.
This will be fun.
It seems to me that the issue is not whether or not faith is based on evidence. The real issue, as how I understand it, is that it's an issue not on faith, but on the issue of epistemology. A lot of atheists, when they're trying to say they're being rationalist in debates, when you look at their epistemology, they're not being rationalist, they're being empiricist. That's how I think you're running on things. And you can clarify if I misunderstood your position. But if I understand your position correctly, you're not a rationalist or an empiricist. There is a difference between being a rationalist and an empiricist. Now, they're not mutually exclusive. You can be rationalist and empiricist, but many atheists who try to say that they're being rationalist, they're in reality are being empiricists.
All the atheists I know are both rationalist and empiricist. That is, all the atheists I would consider to be rational, obviously. I can't know what's in their head. I have no problem with being called an empiricist. I am very much that. Now, I'm not an extremist in that regard. I'm not going to ask for empirical evidence that there's not a singularity outside my door.
Bullshit.
Take that on faith, confidence faith. But yeah, I'm an empiricist. If you make a claim, you need to have some form of reliable evidence. Yes, I am an empiricist. I am also a rationalist, regardless of what you think about me. And believe me, your opinion of me, based on this video, I can care so much less than I used to. Before you made this video, I didn't want you to think I was too bad a guy. Now I think that might actually be a good thing, because...
Can you stop it there?
Wait, what was that?
Can you stop it there? Can I just point out that, okay, as a philosophy graduate, I'd just like to notice that the use and abuse of the words rationalist and empiricist by him here are getting really, really bad. So he's using rationalist in a very layman, unphilosophical context to refer to anybody who's being rational. But in philosophy, that's not what a rationalist is. And I think, Jacob, you were trying to stay with a philosophical definition of rationalist and empiricist. And then he defines an empiricist as what philosophers would define as an evidentialist. Because he says an empiricist is someone who wants some form of evidence. Well, that's not what an empiricist is in philosophy. So he's just abusing these two terms, and by abusing them, I mean, he's free to define them however the heck he likes, but the problem is he's creating a completely different world of discussion here. So the debate in philosophy between rationalism and empiricism is something that's completely gone over his head, and I think if you decide you're going to have any further conversations with him, you really need to clarify how he's going to use those terms and how you want to use them, because it's very clear to anybody who's done any philosophy that he's not using rationalist and empiricist to refer to the debate in philosophy.
Just for the sake of, I guess, assuming that he watches this video for explanation, would you be able to elaborate on that a little more? Like, what is an empiricist per the philosophical definition?
Yeah, sure. I mean, things get complicated very, very quickly. I mean, the technical definition requires that you know a little bit of philosophy, but an empiricist is someone who's claiming that all of our knowledge, all of our propositional knowledge, is gained through our sense experience in one way or another. The difference is a rationalist is claiming that much of our knowledge might come that way, but it's possible to have knowledge which doesn't come through the five senses. So in other words, well, I mean, the word innate doesn't have to apply directly to a rationalist, but, you know, so for example, a rationalist would say that you could know what justice is without having had an experience of justice from your five senses. But this is where he polarizes the two in a very, very nasty way. I mean, not only does he misuse these two words, but he's kind of suggesting that a rationalist would always think that you have to get knowledge through the mind. And that's a mistake as well. Rationalists, only Plato goes that far. None of the other rationalists, like Descartes, Spinoza, for example, they never go that far. All of them accept that there is knowledge that we have through the five senses. But what a classic rationalist does is they say there are also some things that we do know and we can know without having sense experience of them. But no rationalist, apart from Plato, says that all knowledge comes through the mind.
So a rationalist is, I think it does, but a rationalist, in other words, is somebody that believes that we can infer certain things without having to directly observe them?
Yes, that's right, yeah. Well, through the senses. Observe implies sight. You're right to use that verb, but I would just say let's not mean sight. It means the senses. The five senses. unfortunately.
My apologies.
That's cool.
What bugs me the most about this part so far is just this opening thing about, you know, the Thunderbolt used a lot of big words for this one, and I'm thinking, this is a bad thing? Why? You would only say something like that if you thought the guy was trying to trick you by using big words. You know.
It seems to me to be a clear sign of somebody who rejects philosophy. I myself study philosophy as well. By the way, I have nothing to add to Mike's explanation. It was very precise as far as I know. But even in my church, for example, there are people who reject philosophy, and their argument is, well, they use kind of jargon which is something that laymen could never understand, which I don't completely agree with. But that's the same type of argument that he's using, as if being precise with your wording and using specific difficult words, in his words, to describe something that is very precise, it's just normal. At least I believe that's the proper way to discuss. So to say he's using big words, as you mentioned, as being a bad thing seems to me to be just silly. Just seems to be like waving your hands in the air because you don't know anything else to say.
Right. But a lot of people do this. They get into theological or philosophical discussions, and then they start moaning when you start using very precise terminology. And it's very ironic, and you're quite right in what you say, Philo, that, you know, if you want to get involved in these discussions, you need to be careful about the language you're using, and you need to be careful not to equivocate, and you need to be careful to say what you mean by them. That's why philosophers have a very good academic reputation, because they use language in very, very specific ways. They're very careful about what they are claiming and they aren't claiming. And if he's going to moan about language, then really he ought to depart from this kind of academic discussion.
Right, I would agree with that.
And his whole video is a clear sign that he is either incapable, because he just doesn't know the meanings of the words that he's using, or he's trying to, and I don't mean to be rude, but he's trying to make himself sound intelligent by using big words. But to all people that know the meaning of those words, he seems to be even more incompetent by using them.
Well, I hate to invoke the analogy of Hey Ruka once again, but she released a video at some point after addressing me by name, you know, instead of just referring to me as the dude with the hair. But she said something along the lines that I don't like to use technical terms because it bores the fuck out of me. The problem with her saying that is the technical terms make communication as far as science. It's a way of clarifying what you mean. It's a way of communicating outside of casual terms in a language that other people in your field will understand. And it also demonstrates an understanding of that field of study. And I would think that that would, you know, extend to general philosophy. Using those big words demonstrates an understanding of the topic, at the very least.
Yeah, I mean, I used to be a teacher, and, you know, one thing I would tell my kids is, you know, the way you write and also the way you talk shows off your level of education. You know, it's not always somebody just trying to be a pompous ass. It often is just because the person has a fair degree of knowledge in the subject he or she's talking about.
Right, and when people bitch about, you know, other people using big words, you know, to me it's tantamount to intellectual laziness. It's like, I want to be a lazy bastard, and I'm going to bemoan anybody that isn't. Damn anyone that isn't.
Jacob,
you know.
go ahead.
No, I was not.
All right, Jacob, what was that guy that you said? Remember, we were talking about Jacob Holding, and one guy was said that, like, he looked at this book that somebody suggested he read, and he's like, and he was like, well, you know, I couldn't read the whole thing.
No, it wasn't J.B. Holding. It was Cartesian Theist.
Oh, my bad.
No, it was Honest Techno-Atheist.
Oh, yeah, him.
I still remember that video he made where he made a video, he held up, I forget what was the book, it was one of Richard Swinburne's books, He held up the book to the camera and said, I'm not going to read all this. I'm only going to skip through it.
You actually felt the respect of people for him go down.
I forget the name of the book. Was it The Coherence of Theism? I can't remember that.
Yeah, it was. I recommended he get The Existence of God. So not only could he not get the right book, but then he made a video explaining why he wasn't going to read the book, having taken the trouble to get it from the library. Brilliant. It was. I love that video. I summed that up at least a dozen times.
Okay, I think we're going a little off topic here. I think we should get.
Sorry about that. Didn't mean to jump off topic.
That's okay. That's all right.
I might add one more thing as far as using big technical terms. Just speaking in casual terms kind of gives the impression of a false association. For example, in anatomy and physiology, you have the trying to think of the name here, pectoralis dorsii major. That refers to something specific. So there's no confusion as to what you're talking about. Obviously, you have to know what that word means, but if you know what it means, then you know what you're talking about. But if you just say chest muscle, that's vague, confusing, and you could technically be talking about any number of muscles. But I mean, just it's kind of the same thing in other areas where it takes some sort of, I guess, intellectual training to get what's going on. And he's trying to go into this without that training and, bemoan anybody that tries to correct him with those technical terms. But he doesn't realize that not using those technical terms leaves vague associations and confusions as to what's going on, as he's clearly demonstrated through his 4 videos.
All right, let's continue then.
I will post a link in the description box. You never mentioned, and I posted this in my original video to you. You never addressed this, but I'm going to post it again. I would highly recommend you read it because it goes into the whole classic debate between empiricists and rationalists. This has been going on in philosophical debate, this philosophical circles. That is, what is the best way to gain knowledge, whether through empiricism or rationalism? I would say I am a rationalist based on the philosophical definition.
And I would say you might be working your way towards becoming a rationalist, but you're not there yet. As for which one is better, I think you need to understand that this argument has been going on for almost 3,000 years. And you know what? The only reason that we don't have Greek spaceships flying through space with Greek words on them and colonizing Mars is because way back around the time of the Greek philosophers, the philosophers who believed that you can figure anything out just by thinking about it oppressed the philosophers who believed, no, we should test things. The philosophers beat out the scientists. They discredited them.
What was that, Mike?
Okay, on that point, I'd like him to substantiate that claim. That's all I'm going to say at this point. I'd like him to substantiate it, because real historians have a real problem differentiating between philosophers and scientists. There were no such group at this time. So what the hell he's talking about, he's making this up as he goes along. I would like to see some evidence that philosophers as a separate group to scientists actually existed in ancient Greece, because this is a nonsense.
Right, because we're talking about a time when when modern science didn't exist yet. So.
Right.
Yeah, they were all what we call polymaths now. They studied everything: geometry, mathematics, physics. Aristotle was everything.
He studied embryology. There was a lot of other biological things that he studied. I can't list them off the top of my head.
Yeah, the only separation between specific fields of study happened in the early 20th century. I mean, people such as C.S. Lewis were people who didn't specifically study a field, but they had a very broad field of knowledge. And I completely agree with Mike when I heard this, I was actually getting pissed off because he's accusing philosophers of being something of which there is no proof. He's claiming something that I have never heard. And like Mike said, there was no specific group known as the scientists, or could even be analogous to scientists of today, for example.
You were more like, okay, I think we're just going to move on then.
Strongly discourage them from continuing along that vein of reasoning. Because of that, they literally set us back maybe 2,000 years. If we had started experimenting at that point, humanity would have been changed as we know it.
Oh my God.
There's not even a comparison. Yeah, I know you're a rationalist in your mind. I know you think that's better than empiricism. I also know you're wrong. How do I know that? Because empiricism produces things. It puts up rather than shutting up. Rationalism doesn't. Rationalism without empiricism.
Please.
Oh, yes.
Just people were experimenting in the days of ancient Greece, and I might be off by a few centuries, but I don't think the Greek culture was around long enough, even if it did have some sort of detriment to scientific progress, because that's sort of an over-exaggeration and a lack of progress.
It's not just that. He's saying that rationalism is the cause of the detriment of society.
I don't think he's even understanding what I'm meaning by those terms at all.
I don't even think he understands, to be completely honest.
The one thing that set us back by more than a millennium would have to have been the Dark Ages, but, contrary to what he'd probably say, the Dark Ages wasn't caused by religion per se. It was caused by ancient Rome leaving Europe, pretty much, or the rest of Europe, I should say. Sorry.
Right, because of the fall of the Roman Empire, so...
Right. And, God, that just, for the record, that hurt to hear him say.
More than anyone will ever know.
Like,
I don't think we can
I
have
felt
it.
this sharp, excruciating pain go through my teeth when that hit my ears.
Yeah, I think we can't add anything to this that is just completely silly. I mean, it's like, well, I have no words for it.
What else could you say? I mean, he owns himself.
It's like commenting on the little kid saying the sky is blue because it's made of cotton candy. I mean, really,
where do you want to start?
Okay, we're going to continue now then.
Yeah.
Because I pretty much agree with most of what you're saying. So.
This is empiricism. This desk is made out of wood. It doesn't count. This is empiricism. Us talking right now is empiricism. No one figured this shit out just by thinking about it. Your life is preserved because of empiricism. Rationality alone, by the way, this isn't just about empiricism and rationality. What we're talking about is the difference between science and philosophy. Now, we need
pause. What?
The core.
Science is a branch of philosophy.
Yes, it is.
It was born out of methodological naturalism.
Yeah, well, the philosophy is what fueled the modern scientific movement.
Yeah, and without philosophy, even if you're intelligent enough to collect data in the first place, you can't come up with any sort of reasonable or rational conclusion for that data. I mean, you might as well have just said, what the hell was I doing again? What the hell is this scalpel in my hand?
Yeah, I made this point in my video series on Stephen Hawking and his episode on the Discovery Channel show, where, without philosophy, there is no basis for science as we know it. The only thing science could do is simply say, look, that's what happens. That's all it could do. It couldn't do anything else. So I think that he really underappreciates the human intellect for thinking.
Right. And to retaliate is if we didn't have philosophy, we wouldn't be able to use science to begin with.
Right, because a lot of the early scientific discoveries were made by those same Greek and Roman philosophers.
This reminds me of that scene from Robin Hood Men in Tights where Blinken, the blind dude's up on the lookout tower, and Robin looks up like, Blinken, what are you doing up there? Guessing? Oh, guess no one's coming,
All right, let's continue then, because I don't have anything else to add here.
Of science is empiricism. The core of philosophy is rationality. They're not comparable in that way, but if we had to pick one, empiricism actually produces results. Rationality, I'm not going to say it doesn't produce results, but there's no comparison when it comes to figuring new things out. I'm sorry, empiricism wins. It won the...
Pause. Yeah, his argument, his first argument was that empiricism is this glorious thing that causes everything, and then continuing on, he trips over things that he thinks, oh shit, this could also be true. And then his whole argument just falls apart, and he just noticed it. Excuse me, my tongue is tied. He just noticed his own mistake, and his argument just fails. He just knows it.
I can't facepalm this just because I think I'm going to, drop myself into a coma or a concussion or something. I'm at the very least going to crack the skull, but, science is based on strictly empiricism, but not rationalism. What the hell do you call formulating a hypothesis?
Well, what do you call empiricism? I mean, if you're going to say philosophy is useless and empiricism is true, I could just simply say, what is empiricism? And once he gives an answer, he said, well, he just proved my point. He's using philosophy. He's using philosophy to make his point that philosophy is actually nothing. It's just pointless.
Right. This is why we have epistemology. You don't have a proper epistemology. There's no way you can even have these kind of discussions about which is more reliable, empiricism or rationalism. But you're pretty much shooting yourself in the foot when you make this claim.
Pretty much. I mean, and without philosophy, there is no scientific method. I mean, just even thinking about it in a step-like fashion, you don't have a hypothesis, there's nothing to base an experiment upon, and there's nothing to draw conclusions about. In fact, there's no way to draw conclusions in the first place.
Right. All right.
So, I mean, it's just...
All right. Let's continue then.
To go. The only people holding desperately on to the idea that rationality is superior to empiricism are religious.
Okay, even if that was true, how is that relevant?
And it's not even true in the respect that rationality and empiricism actually go hand in hand.
So he makes a distinction that's not really there. He just, but that's just simply due. I think everybody can agree with that. That's just simply due to his ignorance about the terms. He just doesn't understand it.
All right. Let's continue this then.
Philosophers, or at least those who lean more towards the religious mindset.
Because I believe rationalism is a better way of gaining knowledge than empiricism. Not to say that empiricism is a bad thing.
Well, considering you wouldn't be able to say that at all for several reasons. One, you probably wouldn't have survived without empiricism. Two, you're speaking into a microphone that was not made with rationality. They didn't think. I wonder if we could say no.
Because they just fucking built the thing and they didn't think about it.
Empiricism. It's probably a good thing that you don't say empiricism is bad, because it would make you look kind of silly.
But if I were to define my epistemology as of this video, I would say I lean heavily towards rationalism. That's like a famous example of a rationalist would be Immanuel Kant. I made a mistake there, and Ethan Acolyte pointed that out. So, just wanted to point that out as well.
That's fine.
Yeah, that's my bad. So, and he was he was one of the proponents of rationalism. I made a mistake there. Oops. Rationalism isn't strictly an atheist thing. It's an actual epistemological position.
I never claimed it was, and again, I clarified this in another video, that apparently you did not watch. In this particular instance, in this one issue, the issue of theism and atheism, empiricism is the way to go.
Yeah, but if God is beyond the natural universe, you can't use empiricism.
No.
Yeah, it's just he's using a method that is too restrictive to come to a knowledge of something that could possibly exist.
Because when I'm talking about epistemology here, I've never said that empiricism was a bad thing. I'm talking about the epistemology of how we think our foundations for gaining knowledge. And I would say, and this is my opinion, you can disagree, I would say rationalism is a better epistemological foundation than empiricism. That's all I was saying there.
Not only that, he's assuming a lot to say that you don't watch his videos. And I'm hard pressed.
He made a lot of videos, like not just to me, but to both Rational Roundtable and It's the Superfly. So, what was I supposed to do? So, let's continue.
Theists are reaching their conclusions. Still aren't even rational. Sorry, they're not. It doesn't work because it's based on revealed knowledge. Revealed knowledge is one of the things that rationalism argues against. I don't care about Immanuel Kant. So what I will say is, if he wasn't an empiricist at all, he doesn't know what the hell he's talking about.
Just pause it right quick.
What?
Okay, if that's really just that's not even right. Just throw out Immanuel Kant. Just say, I don't care about him, and just throw him out. I mean, you don't do that when you're having an argument, or when you're having a philosophical argument. You don't just say I don't care about him.
To be honest, it's a clear sign of intellectual laziness. Though Jacob made a mistake there. I mean, if you give someone something to read to clarify your position, or in this case, to give authority to your argument by giving somebody who has authority as a source, and you simply reject them out of hand, that's a clear sign of intellectual laziness, or a simple sign of closed-mindedness, but I think those two go hand in hand, to be honest.
Right. Mm-hmm. I think at the very least he should have, followed up and, said, well, hey, you made a mistake here.
Right, here's a
Well, that would have shown that he did the research.
Exactly.
That's the whole series, that he's not really interested in giving a substantive argument. He just seems to be venting, but, that'll probably come at the conclusion.
Right. Pretty much it's I'm right, you're wrong, and I'm not going to pay attention to anything you say.
Yeah, it's exactly like I had said earlier, remember, guys?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like the medieval Catholic Church. Sorry, Jacob, but in some respects they did simply say, well, we think this
I'm not denying. I'm not denying there were some problems in the church there in that time.
Exactly. Well, that's the point I'm making, and I think that though the church has changed a lot now, but I don't want to talk about that. I want to finish the point of the video. So continue on, Jacob.
All right, let's continue. Hold on.
If he wasn't an empiricist at all, he doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. sorry, but rationalism alone was defeated thousands of years ago. Hence me talking to you on this computer.
Now, before I end this video, I want to address that one last thing you brought up at the end of your video, is that you mentioned the prophecy of Isaiah 7:14, and that that actually translates to young woman or young maiden. I'm not sure why you brought this up to begin with, because I never once mentioned anything about that prophecy, and it's not even part of our discussion to begin with, so I don't know why you brought this up anyway.
You know, that's the second time. No, the third time you seem to show confusion when I presented an example of the type of thing I was talking about. I didn't know we weren't allowed to use examples. I didn't know that necessarily means we had to delve deeply into those details.
The problem is that he went from one point and then he went to another point without giving an explanation as to how the 2 points were related. So it's like he brought this point completely out of nowhere. So what was I supposed to do? You know?
Well, I believe that most of his points are just out of the blue, and there doesn't seem to be a real structure in his argumentation. To be honest, the longer we spend on these videos, the more confused I am about what he's actually trying to say.
All right. Let's see. Let's try and finish this real quick. What's that? Someone say something?
No, there was just a bit of feedback from somebody, but I don't know where it's from.
Okay.
Might have been me. I scratched my head.
Okay, let's continue then.
I was just using a few examples. The reason I brought that up is I don't actually remember, but let's go on.
Now you try to say that, well, I'm wrong about it being virgin when it really means young woman and all that stuff, when I never really said it did. I never made that argument. And to make it very clear, yes, it does mean young woman. I already knew that. I never said it meant virgin. It's not a big secret with the biblical scholarship that means young woman or young maiden. I don't know why he even brought that up to begin with. So it doesn't pose a question. It doesn't pose a problem at all for Christian theology. So it's only a problem for the hardcore fundamentalists, but it's not a problem at all for Christianity. So I'm not sure why he brought it up to begin with.
One, I brought it up, I remember now, because you're Catholic. Isn't the Virgin Mary a huge and important part of Catholic theology? Now, I might not know all the different types of Catholic, and I know this is probably the one point you focus on most if you make a response, that you don't know Catholic theology. Whatever. I only brought that up because that seems to be something Catholics are ignoring. You know, venerating the Virgin Mary. I'm sorry, she probably wasn't a virgin.
Oh, is it?
The whole story probably did.
What's that?
Wait a second.
He's just making a lot of presumptions there. I mean,
Right. So he's saying that because in Hebrew, Isaiah 7:14 refers to a young woman, that means that Mary was not a virgin. Right?
That's what he basically
Sounds like it, yeah.
He said that she might not have been a virgin. But
Oh my God.
Well, it seems to me another example of trying to move on the argument because I have no good rebuttal to your previous points. It is trying to explain to a 12-year-old that just had his first mathematical or math class, trying to explain to him the complexities of quantum physics. Of course, it's not that big a difference, but still, he's trying to appeal to another thing he thinks is inconsistent. But you can't really address it until he accepts even the basics, such as there is a theistic God that could, if he wanted to, interact in the world. And if that is possible, then it seems to me very possible that Mary was a virgin and that Jesus Christ rose from the dead. But,
if I might add something, that whole reference in Isaiah, regardless of whether you believe it actually was a prophecy that came true, the reference in Isaiah doesn't say anything about whether the woman is a virgin or not.
Right. Well, that's where things get difficult. The Hebrew word there is alma, and it can be it's quite a wide word. It can mean maiden, young woman, or it can mean virgin. So what his complaint is that in Matthew, in the Greek, it uses the word parthenos, which is a little narrower than alma, and it does mean just virgin. It becomes a very interesting thing because Matthew's quoting clearly from the Greek translation of the Old Testament, which is called the Septuagint. But the point is really a moot one that he's making, because a lot of scholars point out that the Septuagint is just translating in a slightly narrower way. So actually the Hebrew word can be read as maiden, young woman, or virgin. And so it's a complete red herring, the whole thing.
I agree with that. I mean, at the absolute worst, that might represent a sort of mistranslation, possibly, if you wanted to stick with the young woman translation.
That's the kind of accusation
that's the worst thing you could possibly say about it.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Mm-hmm. But, just kind of removing my own personal opinions from it, that doesn't do anything to the truth value of, the mythos of Jesus Christ. Using mythos in the least pejorative sense I possibly can, by the way.
I understand what you meant by that. So,
thank you, Jacob. Mm-hmm. All right. I love that you never get offended at some of the stupid things that come out of my mouth.
The whole deal, I'm looking something up right quick. I happen to have my little trusty Bible app on my cell phone. For the love of man, this stupid thing came to me. You can help me out with this, Jacob. Didn't they refer to the virgin birth in the New Testament whenever they talked about these births?
Forget
to the prophecy, the whole virgin birth?
I forget off the top of my head. So.
Oh, well, that's okay. It's neither here nor there. Go ahead.
All right, let's continue.
How much time is left on this video?
What's that?
How much time is left on this video?
This video is about 8 more minutes.
Okay.
We're almost done.
It happened. Jesus probably existed, but you can clearly see it's a huge problem for Christian theology. Because you can...
What's that?
Stop. Yeah, but stop. I'd like to say something.
All right.
Just an observation. I believe that most of you recognize it, but I just want Esplin, if he's watching this video, to know. You notice that he's trying to make a bigger claim, and then in the middle of making his claim, he stops and then changes the claim. As you can see, I'm not saying that he is actually making that claim, but it does show a kind of position of, he believes things to be worse than they are for Christianity.
Plus, he's exaggerating a little bit,
A little bit.
I believe it's actually that bad, and then he considers, well, maybe it's not that bad, or I should not make such a ground claim because maybe people will call me on it and I have to prove it, or it's something else. But I just wanted to point it out that that's very strange, and it's weird for somebody to do that, in my opinion.
It's not strange at all if he's exhibiting, as we say, intellectual laziness.
Mm-hmm.
He's making these big, grandiose claims, and really it's not... the big thing that you notice is that everything that he has given he has never once said a word that backs any of it up.
No.
Yeah, and he's not giving any references, at least not that I know of.
Right.
Yeah, he's just giving a litany of assertions.
Mm-hmm. All right.
And appeals to his own authority, which is obviously improper, because he is not an authority.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's continue then.
Many virgins from many older religions made its way into pretty much every theology. They all mix, they all share certain commonalities. Now, am I saying that Christianity is based off the Greek? I think it was Perseus who was born of a virgin or divine birth or whatever. No, I'm saying perhaps they all had a common ancestor. It's a common cultural mean. So yeah, that is a problem for Christianity. You say it's only parenting.
Stop. What is this sudden reference of memes? I mean, even the belief in memes might be a meme, so it's self-refuting. Well, it's just silly that he makes these points. It also seems like he's referring to some kind of zeitgeist, the 16 crucified saviors of the world type.
I don't think he was intending to cite zeitgeist, because he said he doesn't support zeitgeist, if I remember correctly.
Well, he sure as hell just made
he made the same claim.
Assertion that's straight out of zeitgeist.
Yeah, he made the same claim, well, not the complete claim that Zeitgeist makes, but he made a claim that Zeitgeist makes as well, that there are any such miraculous, supernatural virgin births in history, of which that's not really true, at least as far as I have done the research. That doesn't seem to me to be at all the case, and he has to prove it. He has the burden of proof here.
By the way, Perseus wasn't born of a virgin. Perseus was born of a lady in Zeus.
I think he's thinking of Mithra or Mithras.
Yeah, I think that might be the one that you're talking about. And J.P. Holding did a series of videos about Mithras that pretty much debunks that.
All right, let's continue. We're almost done.
Actually, if I might add just one thing.
Okay.
Even if there are certain parallels or commonalities between the stories or something like that, again, it doesn't disprove any of them, and it doesn't prove that, there's a common source for all of them.
Right. That's something
correlation doesn't equate to causation.
Right, that's something C.S. Lewis wrote in one of his books. I forget which book he wrote it in, but he did make that point. So.
Exactly. I think it's the book Myth Become True, something like that, or at least that's really it was something like that. But he actually lived under the belief that there were actually other saviors in the past that were very, very similar to Christ, and he actually made an argument that even if that were the case, there's more proof and there's there's very good reason to believe that the Christian story is true.
Right. Not only that, but you think about what Nicodemus told the Sanhedrin when they were conspiring on what to do about Jesus. And he's told them, he's the one who stepped forward and told them to be careful what you do, because he said that, remember, this person, who a lot of people follow, thought he was supposed to be the Christ, and his followers were brought to naught, and he was destroyed and his followers brought to naught, and this person and his followers were destroyed and brought to naught, and then so he referred to Jesus, and you know how that whole thing turned out. The
other thing is that when you compare these different life, death, rebirth deities, there's often a lot more different in the story than there is similar. For example, Mithras has the pteroctony, where he killed a bull with the help of his animal friends. Last time I checked, neither Jesus Christ nor trying to think of another one.
Osiris.
Yeah, neither Osiris or Jesus did anything like that, to the best of my knowledge, anyway. Plus, Jesus, like Osiris, wasn't chopped up into a bunch of pieces, thrown into the Nile, and taped back together by his wife.
Except for his penis.
With the exception of his penis. To the best of my knowledge, Jesus' penis was still very much intact.
All right. Let's continue. I think we've done enough on this point.
I don't understand how even, the biblical, I don't know what you call them, relativists, I guess. What I don't understand is how far they go in the other direction. Anytime something is shown not to be the case, it's like, well, the gist of the story. No, that is an incredibly important thing, especially in Catholicism.
No. Let me clarify a couple things. Virgin birth is an almost universal belief in all of Christendom. He's confusing the virgin birth, the Immaculate Conception, and perpetual virginity. It's like, this is not okay. Ignoring Immaculate Conception and perpetual virginity for now, the virgin birth is not just a Catholic doctrine; it is a Christian doctrine that Orthodox and Protestants share.
Yeah, but I think also just for clarification, because I used to have a wrong concept of Immaculate Conception. This Immaculate Conception would be concerning Mary, and immaculate means without sin.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, just sure.
Right. It just makes the claim that when Mary was born, she was born without a stain of original sin on her, so she can give birth to the Savior. That's just the Catholic claim. But even if you disagree with that doctrine, that has no bearing whatsoever on the virgin birth theology.
Exactly.
Let's keep it even. All right, hold on. You too, Phoenix.
You have a whole theology based off of the fact that Jesus was born of a virgin, and the original prophecy is not a virgin. It's other concepts got mixed in with that. So even if you look at the oldest Jewish documents, what we do have shows that the closer it got to Jesus' time, little by little, not as gradualistic, but at some point, the Hebrew word that meant young maiden started to be the Hebrew word that meant young maiden but could also mean virgin. And by the time the first gospel writer got to it, he translated it as virgin. That's a big thing. It shows that, it at least shows that.
He's claiming conspiracy theory here, which he has to prove.
Right. Let's
not to mention the false fact it's patently untrue. I mean, any scholar of Hebrew language knows that word can mean virgin.
Well, not only that, but he's claiming that the word in the Hebrew text was changed over time, which is false.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and of course, if we look at the Jewish culture, a young woman would, I assume, yeah, probably, I might be wrong, but an unmarried woman, and it would be unbelievable if that woman, if she was unmarried, was not still a virgin.
Not necessarily.
I mean, yeah,
there is a much higher probability of that time period of the woman not being a virgin. I grant you
I think
that.
was the point, though.
But even that was the case, it's not relevant to the topic we're discussing. All right, I'm going to continue. Hold on.
God put something that, why it's irrelevant. I was showing that the core concepts of Christianity have little evidence that can at least be shown to be fabrications to make it fit with the original text. Consider this. Say I...
Pause it.
Wait, what was that?
Pause it. Philosopher, adjust your mic or speakers, please, because it's reverbing from you.
All right, we're almost done. We have 4 more minutes.
Okay.
4 or 5 more minutes. All right.
Oh, by the way, that whole thing we was talking about, the scripture about virgins and stuff shall conceive and give birth. Okay, I believe that scripture was in Isaiah, if I'm remembering right. And
I said Isaiah 7:14.
Yeah, and in Matthew 1:22 and 23, it said, well, hold on, let me just start in verse 21. And she shall bring forth a son, and thou shalt call his name Jesus, for he shall save his people from their sins. Now all this was done that it might be fulfilled which was spoken of the Lord by the prophet, saying, behold, the virgin shall be with child, and it shall bring forth a son, and they shall call his name Emmanuel, which means interpreted God with us. Okay, so the writer of Matthew found it necessary to refer to that scripture because he knew that verse meant virgin. You know?
Well, and the Septuagint uses a word which means virgin.
Yeah.
And the author of Matthew used the Septuagint.
Mm-hmm. Right. And okay, let's continue.
Or say I make a prophecy, right? And I write it down. And someone else is trying to con people into thinking that that prophecy came true. Now there's another prophecy or stories that talk about something else. Well, he's writing about the past, talking about how this prophecy comes true, and he accidentally incorporates that other thing into the prophecy that I made. Now, doesn't that say something about his willingness to make his writings fit with my prophecy? You can see that he added something that he thought was part of the original prophecy to his new writings. That's the point it's trying to make. You're saying that the Gospels are legitimate evidence. Well, this is serious evidence that casts doubt on that. On the fact that you can desperately see the later Gospel writers trying to make Jesus fulfill all the prophecies, and he just doesn't. He fails because he's not accurate. Neither were the Jews keeping prophecies.
Okay, he's really going to have to prove that because he really didn't do a very good job of it at all.
Let's assume, for the sake of the argument, that he's correct in terms of the author of Matthew using Septuagint and that he mistranslated that word in the Hebrew. Let's assume that's true for the sake of the argument, which I agree it's true, but let's assume for the sake of the argument it's true. How does that support his argument?
I don't think it really does. I think he's just, changing the subject because he, again, as somebody else pointed out earlier, he didn't have a good enough rebuttal to your other claims.
Mm-hmm.
That, and I kind of think he's picking at you because you're Catholic, which, again, is kind of tantamount to a sort of subtle ad hom, I guess.
That's true. Now let's continue then. We're almost done.
Point I was trying to make. I said that, whereas I probably wouldn't with the Protestant, not because of how much of a biblical inerrantist you are, but because you're a Catholic. As far as I'm aware, that's a huge part of Catholics.
Can you stop?
Yeah, what's that?
So he said that he would not bring up this issue with the Protestant, right?
Right.
Does he not believe, or does he not know that Protestants believe that Mary was a virgin when she gave birth to Jesus?
Yeah. That's yeah.
That seems to follow, yeah.
I agree.
As Spock would say, his logic is sound.
Ram is that.
Mm-hmm.
I think this will cause a Vulcan to want to kill people.
Let's continue.
Theology. You might not be in that particular part that considers Virgin Mary important, but sue me for not knowing your particular sect.
For now.
What does his sect have to do with anything?
How about sue you for not knowing Christian doctrine in general? If you think that the majority of Christians don't believe that Mary was a virgin, or that Protestants don't believe that. It's like, it's not that he doesn't know Catholicism, it's that he doesn't know Christian beliefs. He claims he does.
It seems more like he's saying, well, sue me if I don't attack your specific position, but rather attack straw men. That to me sounds like what he's saying. I'm sorry I don't know your exact position, so I'll just attack straw men.
Okay, I just realized that that's the end of his response, so I think we're pretty much done with that part. But if anyone has any other points, feel free.
I do actually.
Okay.
In a video that he made to It's the Superfly, he said something about wanting to become a biblical anthropologist. Would it be uncalled for if I said that, perhaps there's a reason that he tried and isn't one right now?
Wait, he said that he tried to become a biblical anthropologist?
He wanted to be an apologist. He wanted to become an apologetic.
He doesn't know that Protestants believe in the virgin birth.
Right. And there's just kind of this thought in my mind that he's not a biblical anthropologist right now, not because he's done with his studies, but because he flunked.
Well, I wouldn't go off on a tangent like that myself, but why? But I just don't. I mean, I'll just say it like this: either if he is going into stuff like that, then I think that a lot of things that he's going to learn in school is going to rock his world, and he'll come out a different man for it, or he will end up keeping, his mindset, which really, in my personal opinion, is very immature and very ignorant, and will end up failing.
Right. At the very least, I think it's indicative of him just starting his studies and then assuming that he already knows more than he actually does.
Well, perhaps further study would bring a little humility?
I would agree with that. In fact, I can speak from personal experience that, that would actually work. I mean, before going to college, I thought, I knew all there was to know about things like evolution or abiogenesis. I mean, I knew I was still ignorant about certain things, but I thought I knew all I needed to know. And then when I actually started going to college and taking the biology courses, there was so much that actually changed about my perception, and I became woefully aware of the shadow of my own ignorance, as it were.
And I think that most people could agree with that, even within. I myself studied philosophy, and if I think back a couple of years ago, I knew absolutely nothing. Well, not anything that random people would also not know. It's kind of a correct sentence, doesn't really matter. The point is that I, for example, would not make grandiose claims about theology, because though I'm a Christian, my knowledge of theology is but of a layman and not more than that. And if Esplin wants to have this, which is really a philosophical discussion, he has to avail himself of some knowledge,
understanding of the terminology and the
exactly.
literature on it.
Exactly. Otherwise, he's just gonna use words in a way which will make it for you, Jacob, and for any of us impossible to discuss with him anything of this nature that we've been discussing here.
Okay, I think that's. What was that?
It's reverb from Philosopher again.
Okay, I think that's about it now. But does anyone do we want to make any concluding statement?
Or ask any questions directly to Esplin?
I'm hoping that he watches this and and maybe understands that when he sees several Christian theists and atheists standing together and saying, dude, you are completely wrong here, then maybe it will get, and showing him reasons why. And actually analyzing in depth these three videos, then maybe he will stop to think. Because, I mean, it's one thing to argue with a few people on YouTube, but when you have a group of people get together and really, kind of, I don't know how to, really kind of, do a concentrated effort to say, wake up, sir.
Not only that, but when we have a group of people, like-minded people who are going forward together, going through these videos point by point to address what mistakes he made in his reasoning,
Right.
Maybe he'll stop to think.
Well, one can certainly hope. I mean, at the very least, I mean,
I just
kind of brain farting here. I'm sorry.
It's all right. I just wish he were here because I know Jacob even said that he had mentioned wanting to come, but he never did.
No, he has work today.
Yeah.
He's working.
I think that there are a couple of things that I quickly want to mention on which I'll explain. The first thing is that I've really noticed, and he's also mentioned this himself, I believe, not in this video, but in another video of which you, Jacob, cut something off and put it in your video, that's why I saw it, that he has a problem with aggression concerning a discussion like this. And I mean, everybody has seen the video and can see that this man truly struggles with emotional outbursts concerning the discussion that we've been having. I think that that's something that he really has to think about, and if it really brings him to that point, I don't think that's healthy, and it will be a detriment to bringing any progress in what he's thinking. The second thing is that his argumentation has to be improved by a lot. He should not simply appeal to his own knowledge. He should not, or his own authority. He should not throw out sources and or authorities provided by other people.
Not only that, I don't mean to interrupt, but not only that, like in the description box of both my videos, I listed sources, and I made it clear that I really would like for him to have gone through all the sources I posted in there before he sat down and made a video response to me. Actually address the sources I brought to the table.
Actually, I do have one thing to add, maybe a couple of things.
Philosopher, do me a favor, just mute your mic until you're ready to talk, because the reverb it started a few minutes ago.
All right.
Thank you.
Anyways, I've actually brought this up when talking about the philosophy of science, and I'll tie this into what we're talking about here, but to have an appreciation for the explanatory power of science, to have an appreciation for its ability to objectively explain certain phenomena about the natural universe, you have to have an understanding of its limitations, what it can't demonstrate, what it can't observe, what it can't test upon, what it can't comment on. The existence of God is one of those things. So likewise, I mean, for him to have any sort of real appreciation for his own epistemology, he has to understand what the limitations of that epistemology are.
Right.
Otherwise, it pretty much destroys any ability to explain anything.
Right.
It destroys his ability to really, I guess, comment on anything. Because there's no understanding of what it can or can't do.
Right. If you don't understand your own epistemology, there's no way you can have a discussion about what we can discuss as to what is knowledge.
Right.
another thing he needs to do is to stop, he needs to learn how to present an argument. And I'm hoping that this video actually helps him in doing that. To see that we presented our arguments not only with words and assertions, but also proof. We were able to look at his arguments and show exactly why they don't hold water. And instead of just saying, I'm right, you're wrong.
Right. He needs to understand that his opinions are just that, opinions. They're not solid facts. And again, skepticism or doubt is not tantamount to this proof. There is still that possibility that he could be wrong. Even as an atheist, I still have an appreciation for the fact that there is some chance, however small I believe it to be, that I could be wrong on the whole God debate.
Right.
And I, understand that the conclusion that I've come to is just an opinion that I've come to. So I don't really hold to that with any level of certainty. I can't say I know whether or not God exists. I can tell you what I think, but that's about it. And if he were to kind of come to that sort of understanding, it's not enough to just call bullshit or to label someone an idiot. It's if you do that and just leave it at that, I mean, you really haven't done anything.
Anyone have other thoughts?
And I step off the soapbox.
Right. I think we've said what needs to be said.
Philosopher.
I was speaking with my mic was muted. I wanted to agree with Will that ridicule just does not belong in any discussion, really. And it's just this kind of ridicule, like ridiculing your pronunciation of specific or your use of big words. Those things just really stop the conversation, especially in this video. Whenever I can imagine somebody who really enjoys Esplin's videos watching the video and then Esplin making a joke like that, he will be, mentally stumbling because he thought that was funny, but not really paying attention to the point of the video, and that might mean that videos that address these specific issues might be very boring, but they or not entertaining in the sense of amusing one, but they are supposed to be informative. And if he wants to be funny, just talk about something else, really.
Well, I can't really comment on the whole ridicule thing.
Yeah, mute again, please, philosopher. Thank you.
I can't really comment on the whole ridicule thing, but I can at the very least say this. When I call people things like cupcake, sunshine, or, call them a moron, the way that I do it is, you're wrong for reasons X, Y, and Z, you moron. It's not, you're a moron, therefore you're wrong, or you're insane, therefore you're wrong. There's no intellectual way to doing that.
Right.
And that makes sense.
That makes complete sense, because you're not insulting them because they're just, you disagree with them. You're insulting them because they got this wrong, and you're explaining your reasons.
Right. If you're going up against somebody who's interested in a dialogue and is actually interested in learning something, then you just don't insult them. But if you're arguing with somebody that has no interest in changing their mind, I don't think there's anything wrong with insulting them. But you don't make the insults the main point, or even the argument. You tack it on at the end as something like an irrelevant part of the sentence or something like that, separated from the verbs and nouns, as it were, for want of a better description.
I mean, that whole tirade in his very first video, though amusing, was completely unnecessary. I mean, when you got to resort to that level of...
I will give him credit. That bizarre cooking analogy was clever. I will give him that. But yeah, it was completely unnecessary.
But the thing about it is that he needs to understand when you resort to tactics like that, character assassinations, name calling, and such, especially at the very beginning, you know, like that, and you spend, how many minutes long was that first video?
It was like 6 minutes.
Yeah, 6 minutes on a tirade like that. I'm sorry, you as the colloquialism goes, you lost the game.
Right.
That's a sign that you have already lost the game, and you lost it before you even played it. You know?
Right. My philosophy on the subject, no pun intended, if there was one, is if all you've got is insults from the onset, you've already been pwned.
Mm-hmm.
And if at some point towards the end of the discussion or the middle of this discussion, that's all you've got, you're pwned. Plain and simple.
Right. And it doesn't, throwing a tirade of character assassinations and little witty remarks akin to a wrong sandwich does not make you intelligent. It makes you look like a douchebag. I'm sorry I have it, but it's true.
And we're not saying this because we're trying to be dicks. We're saying this as constructive criticism of how you approach the discussion.
Yeah,
I am. Get some intellectual standards, cupcake.
Yes, I agree that.
No, I'm kidding. But seriously, they do need improvement.
Yeah, like, I agree that if he felt like that he needed to vent, that throwing something like that up as a response and incorporating it into the 4-part series, I don't think he should have. Because that makes it part of his response to what you were saying. If he wanted to do that separately, then I would not have had a problem with it, and left the other 3 as parts 1, 2, and 3 of an actual response to you.
I would agree there. Okay. I think that's about it. And I want to say before we end this recording, thank you all for participating. I really appreciate your input. And thank you again. This was a very interesting experience.
Not a problem.
No problem.
If you ever need to join something like this again, remember that Zelda holds my leash.
All right.
All right, I'm going to stop the recording once my
later,
system catches up.
Later.
Bye-bye.